I believe we can get started.
You want me to go, Joyce?
Yes, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Global Teach Connect Summit. I'm happy that we are all here. Since our last summit in 2019, we have learned much about the importance of global teaching as well as virtual learning due to COVID. We would normally have our summit every year. It's an annual event for our federally funded Title VI grant. However, due to COVID-19, we missed 2019, but we are ever so pleased to be here today. Our vision for this summit today is that it is a strategic conversation that brings different perspectives within a system together to talk about the big picture and the big questions. I often rely on this format for this reason, because I believe that the best time to convene a summit is when you need to discuss high stakes and complex issues or perceive major changes ahead. And so today we're going to adopt the theory or the process of what I call learning forward. So what does the future of teacher preparation look like? What does it look like now in terms of global teaching competencies? And what is the intersectionality between equity, inclusion, social justice for our learners as we discuss the important issue of global teaching conferences? So we have 5 results that we would like to have for this conference today. One being that we will together create a shared vision and recommendations about a future direction on this topic, discover imperatives for change. What are those things that are important to us, as well as to the learners and to those we serve? Establishing some principles to guide future actions, and fostering new or improved relationships with key stakeholders that can facilitate change and future action. And of course, identifying course corrections to help us continue to learn forward. So we welcome our international guests from the United Arab Emirates, from Finland, from China, from America, and the 4 corners of the world. We thank you for being here. I now give you our esteemed Dean, Dr. Kenny Hamrick, who is going to do the opening remarks to get us started on our agenda for today. Welcome, Dr. Hamrick, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Joyce, and welcome everyone to the 3rd annual Global Teach Connection Summit of 2021. Joyce gave me a lot of time, but I'm not a very long-winded person. So I just want to welcome all of you. And as you can see, I'm sit under a skylight and I'm melting right now. So during this time, during the day, if it's sunny out. So I will keep it quick, but I just wanted to congratulate Joyce and Kristy and all the other individuals who helped put on this conference. You guys do a wonderful job with this program and have for many years. I will say that we just started a global council in the School of Education to focus on this issue and to make strategic advancements in this area in the School of Education across the whole Drexel University will be leaders in this. But I just congratulate everybody for being here. I look forward to hearing the recommendations that you have, and specifically those people from Drexel, what can we do in the School of Education? Like what comes out of this conference. So welcome everyone, enjoy your time over the next 2 days. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful because the faculty and staff in the School of Education only do wonderful things. So enjoy your time, and I will turn it back over to Joyce.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamrick, for that wonderful introduction. And we certainly hope to live up to the promise of the day. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you'll all be able to see it. And I'm going to go to speaker view. So you'll only be seeing me, but we know that you are all still there. So don't you go anywhere. Wonderful. So I take it that we're all seeing my screen. And again, welcome to the third annual Global Teach Connection Summit 2021, reimagining teachers' global teaching competencies to advance educational equity. This project is funded and sponsored by the U.S. Department of Education, Title VI Part Program through the University of Pennsylvania Area Study Centers, as well as Drexel University. And you'll see those three emblems at the bottom of the screen as we continue our program. So we've just heard opening remarks from Dr. Kenny Hamrick about the value of global learning as well as global teaching, so much that she's already established a council within our School of Education to address this issue. And we look forward to the success of that initiative. Our agenda today is full. We've heard our introduction. Now I will give you an overview and sort of a virtual tour of our project and what we hope to achieve today. First of all, I want to say this. This topic is kind of personal to me because I have a very diverse family, as you would see on the screen here. This is us. And so this journey is personal for me because of my international family, and many of them are here today from the United Arab Emirates and from other places. And so I value and thank all of you for your participation. The first question we have is, what is global competence? Since that's what we're talking about. So we're gonna just take a look at a short video from the Asia Society to help us.
There are four key elements of global competence. Global competence starts by being aware, curious, and interested in learning about the world and how it works. Students are able to ask globally significant questions, analyze evidence from multiple sources, and develop an argument that draws to sensible conclusions. Students recognize that they have a perspective and someone else may or may not share it. They weigh all sides and from that incorporate different perspectives into their point of view. Globally competent students effectively communicate their ideas with diverse audiences, including through the use of appropriate technology. While English is the primary language of business, speaking another language is important for collaborating across borders. By applying what they have learned, students can translate their ideas into appropriate actions to discover solutions for both local and global challenges. We now face a critical imperative to prepare all students for work and civic roles in an environment where success increasingly requires the ability to compete, connect, and cooperate on an international scale.
So we thank the Asia Society for this video. It's from the Center for Global Education. We find in this project that we've called on many of our National Resource Center partners, and we all share resources to help us address this issue as we continue our efforts to learn forward. So the Global Teach Connection Project, what is it and what is our purpose? On the screen, you'll see this is our team, individuals who've been working with us over the past 4 years in order to explore, research, and to look for practical solutions that perhaps can be integrated into curriculum and into our communities, as well as in our personal life. One of the first questions that people think about when we talk about diversity and we talk about competencies and cultural issues, they think about race. But race is only one factor, and it's not always the most critical factor. One of the questions that always comes up is, do we have enough teachers that are as diverse as our students? And research shows that we are falling behind in our efforts to keep up with the student-teacher ratio of race and ethnicity when it comes to the students that we teach. But the question is that we really need to consider is the fact that race doesn't have to matter, but it can matter, and ethnicity can matter. Our cultural differences can matter. All those things will often matter if our teachers are not prepared to be globally competent. So we really need to unpack and discover what it means to be a globally competent teacher. And we'll be soliciting ideas from you about that. The second question that is often asked when we talk about global competence is, does language matter? The U.S. Department of Education Title VI program that funds this project identified 78 priority languages in the U.S. alone. Many of these languages include what we know as less commonly taught, but critical languages. The most commonly taught languages in our schools usually emerge as, of course, English, and then Spanish, and French, and those would be our top. And then from there, we have fewer representations of languages actually being taught in our school, unless it happens to be a language school. And so as you look at these languages, you may speak some of these languages, and we are looking at the diversity that we have in this summit alone in terms of the languages that might be familiar to you. We have other languages, some that you may have never heard of. I know I hadn't heard of any of these languages when I first joined this project and saw this list, but they are critical languages. They are important languages because students are entering our classrooms with either dialects of these languages, or they speak them, or they have exposure to them. So then the question is that we're asking in this grant is what, who, why, and how. So the Global Teach Connect project is exploring the preparation of teachers and global education competencies, what they need to become intercultural experts and change agents in the education of our learners, including those who may speak these least commonly taught languages that we're not familiar with. This includes new immigrant learners, refugees, as well as expats that may be in our countries whose children come into our schools. So the project's goal is to focus on the following 5 areas: educational needs of newcomers or immigrants, with special emphasis on gender issues, because we know that gender can make a difference depending upon the educational learning environment and the country. Then schooling policies. What are those policies that focus on helping our learners to communicate, especially those in the least commonly taught languages? Do we have adequate policies in place? I know in the United States, we have a program called ESSA, which strives to provide equal learning to all of our learners. And then we have educational policies and pedagogy to consider in global context, because we want to advance equity and social justice to make sure that all of our learners are receiving the same support or equal support or equitable support from their teachers, as well as the school leaders. So that means we have to look at the teacher preparation. We must look at the curriculum. What are we teaching? What are they learning? What are we training our experienced teachers in terms of professional development? And how are we using new technologies for learning and teaching? So these are the 5 big areas or arms of our project. And so what that looks like in scope and connections, meaning that we have to work with technology vendors. We work with the University of Pennsylvania, our Title VI funding agency, and 2 centers, South Asia Center and what we call the Middle East Center. And we also work with our national resource centers. You just saw a video from the Asian Society, which is a part of one of our national resource centers. And then we also work with our School of Education within our own university and specific programs within the School of Education in the university, such as the Global International Education Program, the Educational Leadership Program, whom we have our director here from that program, Dr. Deanna Gill. And then we have the Teacher Education Program. And together, all of this makes up the green light for us. Because from this, we say, we have all the resources and the people we need. So we need to, rather than work on these issues separately, we need to come together in collaborative interdisciplinary teams. So today, The lineup that we have for speakers and presentation includes such a framework, an interdisciplinary team who's come together to engage you in these discussions with us about global teaching competencies. So what does teacher global competence look like? We asked a few teachers with one of our partners, and here's what they had to say.
I think that global competence is having the ability to interact effectively with people who are different from you. And that's very important for students today as our world is becoming more and more connected.
I think it's about international awareness of different countries, children being aware of not only their place in the classroom and in the school and in their hometown, but their place in the world. That idea of global competence is really a kind of a term that incorporates so many different things to me.
I think it's a beautiful way for the children to connect with other cultures and they realize that in this world, it's not just me.
Students who are well-rounded, students who are appreciative of different cultures and different backgrounds, who are aware and who are invested in being a great citizen.
Global competence is this understanding and awareness of oneself as an active participant in the world, not just as an observer, thinking differently, taking on different perspectives.
Being able to work together as a team, being able to come up with solutions, being able to solve problems.
So when I think about a globally competent teacher, I don't necessarily think about a teacher who is able to, really have knowledge about everything in the world or every region in the world, but who is able to have a clear sense, a clear vision for where they want their students to be at the end of the year, to understand, this is what I want my kids to know about the world at the end of the year. This is what I want my students to be able to do at the end of the year, and then to really be a facilitator to help them gain that understanding and to put the kids in the front and to really let them drive their own learning.
It embraces the entire world, and the kids just love to learn about the different countries. And through the process, I'm also learning as well.
For me as a leader, I want them thinking greater than themselves and how we can help our fellow man.
Thank you. So I don't know if you were taking notes, but I've heard this many times and I was still taking notes. And so that brings us to our next speaker, who's going to share her research related to teacher global competencies. And her research is entitled, as we see here, Teachers Global Teaching and Learning Competencies Study. And she will share her research, and I'm going to turn it over to her. But this is Dr. Alicia Lippert. And Dr. Lippert has a great background in this area. She earned her EDD in educational leadership at Drexel University. She has a passion for understanding the importance of global competence, especially for educators, in order to prepare globally competent students. She was trained as a special education teacher. She spent 14 years teaching students with varying disabilities, along with students who struggled academically, but did not qualify for services. And we know we have many of those students in our own classrooms. In her years as a teacher, she helped to design and improve curriculum and was part of the faculty that created the non-traditional Apple Distinguished School that was the setting for her research. And so when Alicia decided to get a doctorate, this was where her passion was. So she designed a study to look at the problem. The problem that exists that she found was that high school teachers may lack global competence skills and aptitudes required for readiness to prepare students to compete in a global workplace. And they may not be prepared to teach those skills and aptitudes. And because we are seeking answers to such questions as related to this issue, Dr. Lippert's research was particularly appropriate for this session today. Following this session with Dr. Lippert, there will be a short Q&A session. All of the presenters will be available after the presentations. They will be available in breakout rooms. So you'll be able to join whatever room that you find is of most interest to you, that you would like to engage more with the speakers. So at this particular time, I believe that to respond, if you want to raise your hand, there's ways to raise your hand during the Q&A using the Zoom features, but you can also use the chat room to type in your questions and your comments throughout the presentation so that we'll be able to address those when we reach the Q&A part. So Dr. Lippert, are you ready?
Yes, I am, Dr. Pittman.
So you may share your screen and your audience is waiting.
Okay.
I will stop sharing my screen. And there we all are.
Okay. Good afternoon. I would first like to start by saying thank you to Dr. Pittman for asking me to present my research at this summit. I would also like to thank all of you for attending today's presentation. As Dr. Pittman just said, I'm Dr. Alicia Lippert, and prior to temporarily retiring at the end of the 2019-2020 school year, I was a special education teacher. As she read in my bio, I taught for 14 years, but as I was approaching the completion of my doctorate program, I decided it was time for something new, and preferably in Florida where it doesn't snow. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit, so I'm currently still enjoying temporary retirement while I continue looking for the next step in my career. But enough about me. Let me get to what you really came here for, which is my research study and the results from those and the implications. So as a high school teacher, I always wondered whether I was preparing my students for the workforce and the world they would face. It kind of came pretty quickly and pretty obvious that we were not doing what we should be. So focusing on global competence just seemed interesting to me. I conducted my research in March to May of 2020, at the very beginning of the pandemic. In fact, my original research plan was to give this assessment to the students. However, 2 days after I handed out permission slips, the governor closed down the schools in Pennsylvania. And so I had to sort of change gears and decided to go ahead with assessing the teachers because we know that if teachers are not globally competent, we cannot expect the students to be. My research study was titled Convergent Parallel Mixed Methods Case Study, Examining and Exploring Teachers' Global Competence, Including Perceptions and Preparedness at a South Central Pennsylvania High School. So my presentation today will cover the problem and the purpose of my study, what the literature discussed, my data collection procedures and results, and a discussion of those results. I'll conclude with some conclusions, recommendations, and implications. I would be interested in opening up the dialogue during the Q&A to hear any recommendations and implications you may have as well. As a teacher of high school students, as I said, it did not take long for me to realize that we were graduating students who were not ready or prepared to work in a global workplace, which, as we can see in our society, is becoming more and more global. It was obvious they were lacking skills, and the research that I found concurred. However, as I was conducting my research, it also pointed out that in order for our students to be globally competent, teachers first needed to be globally competent and to possess those global competency skills. As a member of that population as a teacher, I knew that my preparation program, as well as my professional development, were not focused on global competence skills and aptitudes. I was, however, curious what others perceived and what the data would say. And as Dr. Pittman read, the problem that I was looking at was that high school teachers may lack global competence skills and aptitudes required for readiness to prepare students to compete in the global workplace, and teachers may not be prepared to teach those skills and aptitudes. So the purpose of my study was to identify the global competence skills and aptitudes of the teachers at the high school, as well as to assess their readiness to prepare students while simultaneously exploring their perceptions of what students' global competence skills and aptitudes were, and whether they themselves were actually prepared to teach those. The significance of the study was that if we want our students to succeed, then teachers first must improve in identifying those skills and aptitudes that are necessary, including whether they feel prepared to teach those skills and aptitudes. The effectiveness of teachers in preparing those students is needed for global competence, and it has not been widely studied in the research. Globalization has affected many facets of society, including education. Unfortunately, education has not made all of the necessary changes to keep up with the ever-changing global market, and we are sending out students who cannot compete. There's an abundance of research to support that. However, there is limited research examining the teacher global competence and the skills and aptitudes they themselves are lacking. This study was able to examine the skills and aptitudes that the teachers at the high school were lacking, as well as to explore the teachers' perceptions of their actual global competence, the skills and aptitudes they believed they were lacking, and why they were lacking those skills. It provided an opportunity for teacher preparation programs to see areas that need more focus, and for school districts to see possible topics for professional development. This mixed methods study used a central question: to what extent are teachers at a high school in South Central Pennsylvania prepared with global competence, skills, and aptitudes to address the needs of high school students to be successful in a global workplace? It also examined subsequent research questions for each of the phases within the study. This study did face some limitations, including a small sample size. There's only a small amount of staff at the school. The ever-changing skills and aptitudes necessary for global competence, meaning that what is needed now may not be what's needed in 5 or 10 years. The researcher was a faculty member at the research site and the COVID-19 pandemic. Due to the pandemic and a small group of seniors who gave consent prior to the school district or to the state shutting down schools, the research study had to be altered to focus only on teachers. The pandemic also required all communication to be via email and all the interviews to be conducted using Zoom. After examining the available literature, the 3 streams determined were global competence and the models that are available, teacher perceptions, both of skills and aptitudes necessary and preparedness to teach those skills and aptitudes, and teacher global readiness. Through the completion of the literature review, it was determined that there were numerous definitions of global competence, along with numerous skills and aptitudes necessary, and a few models that are followed, including from the Global Competence Associates, who are the researchers behind the Global Competence Aptitude Assessment that I use to assess the teacher's global competence. Research suggested that students are lacking in global competence skills and aptitudes because their teachers are both lacking in global competence skills and aptitudes themselves and are not prepared to teach them. The research was limited as to what skills and aptitudes teachers were lacking and why they perceived themselves to be unprepared to teach for the global competence. This study aimed to begin to add to the limited research. Global competence has been defined by Hunter and Hunter as having flexible, respectful attitudes, including self-perspective and applying knowledge of the historical, geographic, and societal factors that influence cultures in order to effectively interact and build relationships with people around the world. It is a concept with varied definitions and frameworks to support it, but in order to be globally competent, a person must possess certain skills such as critical thinking, cultural awareness, and problem solving. Hunter and Hunter used their definition of global competence to help them create the model you see outlined in the image as the basis for their global competence aptitude assessment. This assessment was used within the study to assess teacher global competence at the research site. If we are to expect students to have these skills and aptitudes that are in this image, teachers must also first possess them. Sorry about that. So a teacher's ability to teach global competence skills is pertinent to the ability for students to be prepared. Understanding how teachers perceive their ability, as well as their perceptions that students are lacking, provides insight into the difficulties of incorporating globally focused curriculum. Research indicates that teachers perceive themselves as unprepared to teach for global competence, likely because they themselves are not globally competent. Teachers' own lack of global competence leads to teachers not always perceiving those necessary global competence skills and aptitudes that students need, meaning they are less likely to instruct on those skills. According to the researchers listed, research continues to show that the most important factor in student achievement is the teacher. According to teacher preparation programs and professional development opportunities are not always globally focused. This could be due to a lack of understanding, a lack of opportunities to include within the curriculum, or due to the nature of education today and its extreme focus on standards and standardized testing. No matter the cause, research demonstrates the extreme importance for teacher preparation programs to focus on preparing globally competent teachers through the courses provided, through global education, and even through study abroad opportunities. Students cannot be globally competent if their teachers are not first globally competent themselves. In regards to the instrumentation used, the teachers were given the Global Competence Aptitude Assessment, which was created with years of research by the Global Competence Associates. The teachers' perceptions were determined based on responses given during a one-on-one semi-structured interview. During those interviews, teachers allowed me to determine what skills and aptitudes they perceive as being necessary for students, whether they believe those skills and aptitudes are being taught within the curriculum, and if they themselves are competent to teach those skills and aptitudes. This table provides an overview of the target population. Within the research site, there were 32 teachers, 15 male, 17 female, all Caucasian. All teachers were included in the target population and were emailed a recruitment email through their school district emails, as well as being provided with the consent information. A Zoom session was held to answer any questions they may have. 2 attended. Due to all participants being of age to give consent, consent forms were not needed. Only written consent via email was necessary. Now, to expand on this, the diversity of the teachers is obviously not there. However, the student population is quite diverse. The quantitative data was analyzed using the norm reports provided from the survey, as well as SPSS software for descriptive statistics and a z-test. The qualitative data was open coded using in vivo, and then was further coded using selective coding. The data collection and analysis process included the following. For the quantitative data, the survey was distributed to 30 staff members. I received 24 completed surveys with a response rate of 75%. The raw data provided by the survey was entered into SPSS to calculate descriptive statistics, as well as a z-test. For the qualitative data, 9 staff members completed the interview with a 28% response rate. Interview responses were open coded using in vivo, and then were further coded using selective coding. You will see that for the survey, it was evenly split pretty much between males and females. However, the interviewees were primarily female. With regards to the quantitative findings, descriptive statistics were used to identify some components of the data. They were broken down into the 2 sections of the survey, which was internal readiness and external readiness, as well as each of their respective subsections. Along with the descriptive statistics, a 1 sample z-test was ran to determine whether the results from the participants were significantly different than those of other educators. The 1 sample z-test was ran with the mean scores from the areas of internal readiness and external readiness. The results from those will be in the following slides. These are the results for internal readiness. The next slide will show the results for external readiness. Within internal readiness, areas of self-awareness, risk-taking, open-mindedness, and attentiveness were also examined. And as you can see, for self-awareness, I did have 1 participant who managed to score 100. And in risk-taking, it had both the lowest score as well as one of the highest scores. These are the descriptive statistics for external readiness, as well as its subsections of historical perspective, global awareness, intercultural capability, and collaboration. And as you can see on external readiness, there were 3 scores of 100, but as you also can see, there were some very low scores in some of those subsections. So they may have been fairly consistent for the mean and median scores, but the range of scores varied greatly. Overall, most of the sections and subsections were close to evenly split between those scoring above and those scoring below the mean. However, risk-taking and historical perspectives display a significant amount more below the mean, whereas intercultural capability and collaboration displayed a significant amount more above the mean. These identify areas of weakness and areas of strength for the participants of this study. This slide provides the results for the internal readiness and shows that there was not a statistically significant difference. It was close though, coming in at 0.056. With regards to external readiness, it also did not show a statistically significant difference. The result was 0.86. Although individual results varied greatly, the results from the Z-test determined that when examining the means of internal and external readiness, the teachers participating in this research study were as globally competent as other educators nationally and internationally who took this same survey. So the quantitative data collected that was completed, the surveys completed by the teachers indicated that there was no statistically significant difference. Internal readiness, there was also no significant difference. However, one area of strength within external readiness was the subsection of collaboration with a mean of 77. This did not surprise me, however, because collaboration between teachers as well as students is a focus for this site. And examining internal readiness subsections, the area of risk-taking, the majority of the participants were below the mean, indicating an area of improvement for teachers. When examining the descriptive statistics of mean and median of each section and the subsequent subsections, for all with the exception of open-mindedness, intercultural capability, and collaboration, the difference between the mean and median are less than 2 points, indicating that there were not extreme outliers and scores were normally distributed between the teachers. In the subsections that were the exception, there was a wide range between the lowest and highest scores obtained. With regards to the qualitative findings and results, I interviewed 8 females and 1 male, all Caucasian. They had been teaching between 5 and 25 years and covered all academic areas as well as special education. Most had lived and received their teacher preparation training within Pennsylvania, and only a few had traveled internationally. After coding the 9 interviews, the following results were determined. Although the research question did not focus on the understanding teachers have of the concept of global competence, it was obvious rather early in the interview that the teachers who participated were unsure of exactly what global competence entailed. One teacher even stated, I don't know that I have a great understanding of global competence. It's not like it's something we hear about all the time. And another teacher simply stated, to be honest, I don't really know. This lack of understanding of the concept then led to those same teachers perceiving that they themselves were not globally competent. Without a clear understanding of the concept, it is difficult to determine skills and aptitudes necessary and whether one feels prepared or not. Teachers in this study reported skills and aptitudes such as cultural awareness and understanding, open-mindedness, technology skills, communication skills, and critical thinking skills, including problem solving, as the most important and necessary for global competence. When probed for additional skills, they were unable to come up with anything other than basic education skills. When asked if they were prepared to teach for global competence, the teachers overwhelmingly perceived themselves as being unprepared. Further expanding on this interview question, found that the teachers felt that this was due to a lack of globally focused courses in their teacher preparation programs, as well as a lack of professional development in the area of global competence. In the case of this research study, the quantitative results from the assessment completed by the teachers indicated that they are as globally competent as other educators based on the mean scores of their results. Teacher scores indicate that they may not be at the peak of global competence, however, they are well on their way. Contradictory to the quantitative results are the qualitative results that indicated teachers perceive themselves as unprepared and not globally competent. This could be due to their limited understanding of global competence and the skills and aptitudes necessary, because according to their responses, it was not a focus of their teacher preparation program or professional development at the school. The findings then led to the following themes and sub-themes: a limited understanding of skills and aptitudes, a lack of preparedness, both in courses in teacher preparation program and in professional development within the school district, and a lack of global competence with a limited understanding of the concept, as well as being sheltered. Many of the staff members at this site rarely leave their county, let alone the state or the travel internationally. So the results from the study identified that there was not a statistically significant difference in the scores of the teachers in the study compared to other educators. Although none of the teachers scored a perfect 100 on all sections, there were some subsections that there were incidents of a perfect score, and most of them came from one teacher who has taught in other states and has traveled internationally, teaches history, is very culturally aware. Responses from the interview questions found that the teachers had a minimal understanding of the concept, as well as the skills and aptitudes that were necessary. These results concur with what available literature says. While teachers were able to come up with some of the skills and aptitudes necessary, their list was quite limited and focused primarily on cultural awareness and 21st century skills such as technology skills and critical thinking skills, which are a big focus of this research site as it is very technology based. Every student has an iPad. With regard to teacher preparedness, they all felt unprepared to teach the skills and aptitudes. And that feeling was because of a lack of global courses in their teacher preparation programs and a lack of professional development in the area of global competence. The literature fully supports the claim made by the teachers. The daunting task of teacher global competence should be a required part of teacher preparation programs and professional development for current teachers. Teachers reported that the focus in their teacher preparation programs was on other pressing issues at the time, and global competence was not one of them. They also indicated that they did not recall the district offering any professional development in the area of global competence, but with their limited understanding, they could not be sure that there may not have been something offered. For the conclusions, we'll examine each of the sub-questions. So when tested at the 0.05 level, there was no statistically significant difference between internal and external readiness means for the teachers in the study, as well as against other educators, both nationally and internationally. Therefore, it can be assumed that these teachers are as globally competent as other educators nationally and internationally. For the following qualitative sub-question, results indicated that teachers are rather limited in their understanding of the skills and aptitudes that are truly necessary for students to be globally competent, as well as being prepared for the global workplace. For the second qualitative sub-question, when teachers were asked if they were prepared to teach for global competence, they all perceived themselves as being unprepared. With further expansion on this revelation, it was determined that the teachers felt this feeling of unpreparedness was due to a lack of globally focused courses in their teacher preparation programs and within professional development. The teachers who participated in this interview have been teaching for a wide range of years, and therefore the time period they received their teacher preparation programs in appeared to be a possible cause for the lack of global courses. These results support the literature that teachers perceive themselves as unprepared to teach global competence skills and aptitudes. Using the data collected in the overall central question was then analyzed. So although the results from the global competence aptitude assessment completed by the teachers indicated that they were as globally competent as other educators, the qualitative results from the interviews showed that these teachers perceived themselves to both be unprepared and lacking global competence themselves. This discrepancy in results can be explained by teacher perceptions of unpreparedness due to a lack of current professional development with a global focus, as well as within their teacher preparation programs that for some of them had been 20 years prior. When examining this data, the implications and recommendations that I determined was number one, teacher preparation programs. Although it is too late for these teachers, Higher education institutions should re-examine their teacher preparation programs to ensure there's a global focus with required courses in areas that would improve teacher global competence, their understanding of the skills and aptitudes necessary, and their ability to teach those skills and aptitudes to their students. Teacher education programs must utilize a variety of strategies, including coursework and experiential learning opportunities such as study abroad, to engage pre-service teachers to develop the skills and aptitudes necessary for the success of diverse students competing in the global workplace. Recommendation number 2 is within regards to professional development. While they agreed that professional development for technology skills had been offered, along with opportunities for critical thinking, they were limited in focus specifically on the technology being utilized within the district and critical thinking skills related to reading and writing, not necessarily problem solving. Administrators and other staff providing professional development for teachers should consider locating and offering in the areas of 21st century skills, cultural awareness and understanding, risk-taking, open-mindedness, and various other areas of global competence that teachers are demonstrating or perceiving a lack of skills within. Providing professional development time along with resources to teachers to collaborate together could also be very beneficial. Future recommendations. Due to the limited research within the area of teacher global competence and their perceptions and preparedness, there are many opportunities for future research within this field. The global competence of teachers, including skills and aptitudes they lack, should be explored beyond just teachers at the high school in South Central Pennsylvania. In addition, teacher perceptions of skills and aptitudes identified as necessary for students and their preparedness to teach those should be further explored. Further research should be conducted to examine possible causes for this discrepancy between survey results and perceptions. Due to the frequency with which a lack of global focus in teacher preparation programs and professional development was reported by interview respondents, these factors should be further assessed to determine areas in need of improvement or missing. If teachers are provided as recommended professional development in global competence and the skills and aptitudes necessary, then a follow-up study could be conducted to determine the effectiveness of those and the teacher's global competence and perceptions of preparedness. This convergent parallel mixed methods case study highlighted the importance for teachers to first be globally competent themselves and to perceive themselves as prepared before they can be effective and successful in preparing students for the global workplace. This study specifically addressed the importance of globally focused teacher preparation programs and professional development on the perceptions teachers have of their global competence and ability to prepare students with the skills and aptitudes necessary. Results from this study indicate that while teacher surveys determined that they were as globally competent as other educators, teachers perceive themselves as both lacking global competence and being unprepared. Students deserve to be successfully prepared for the world, specifically the global workplace for which they will face. To do so, teachers need to be prepared with global competence skills and aptitudes through globally focused teacher preparation programs and professional development. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very inspiring and informative presentation that further somewhat aligns with the testimonies from the teachers that we saw in the video. But without going into a discussion of those previous presentations, I would like to give you an opportunity right now to engage with Dr. Lippert and ask her any questions you might have, or to offer your comments about any observations that you might have about your own perceptions about global teacher competencies, or what may be happening in your own school environment and how it relates to the findings that Dr. Lippert just shared with us. So this is kind of an open conversation with her at this time and with us. So feel free to, if you want to raise your hand and open your mic, we will be happy to allow you to do that. I know we're shy. Looking for questions in the chat room. I don't see any there. I guess one of my observations was kind of related to the transferability of your findings, Dr. Lippert. How do you see your findings transferring to other environments, such as international universities or schools?
I guess I would expect that international universities and schools should score better. But I also thought that some of my people would score better. I think it would be interesting. I have a friend who is currently teaching in Hong Kong, and I wanted to have her students take it or her teachers take it and sort of compare just out of curiosity to see how that would go.
Okay, I have two comments. One is from Dr. Deanna Hill, and if she wants to speak, she can. Samantha, if you want to open. Okay, Dr. Hill, would you like to make your comment?
Sure, thank you so much. Just really enjoyed the presentation today. Thought it was really comprehensive and clear. The question I had for you was, you made a recommendation, or your finding was really around lack of preparedness, both in terms of pre-service and in-service professional development. And I was curious, as you think about global competency, how you see that aligned with the current context, especially the push for like anti-racism pedagogy and other aspects that really focus on race and education.
Oh, good question. I just think that any concept that can get us more globally competent as teachers should be something that we focus on. And I think that it needs to be specific to the school district as well. I think obviously there are going to be certain school districts out there that have a better grasp on certain concepts based off of the environment that they are in, as well as the makeup of the staff and the students. But I think that diversity definitely needs to be a focus.
Okay, we have comments from the United Arab Emirates, Professor Ranam Al-Bustami. Would you like to open your mic and give your comment? Those of you who are here, you can also read the comments in the chat if you open your chat. How we might increase the global competence of national teachers pool in the US, which does not appear to be as strong as it could be. So I guess Dr. Nabil is asking for a changed model that you might represent in terms of specific strategies. What do you see as the imperatives for bringing about the change? What are the most important ingredients based upon your study?
I think that teachers need to get out more within their pre-service. You just sort of, you're in your area and you student teach in your area. You usually end up getting a job in your area. And so you're only really comfortable and familiar with what is in your environment. And that doesn't necessarily, people move, people come in, and then you're not prepared for that interaction, for that difference in cultures, and you're not aware and prepared. So I think that study abroad opportunities, student teaching in schools that are not in your normal realm, all those opportunities would be very beneficial.
Dr. Ranam is ready to go with his comment.
Yes, thank you, Alicia, for this great study, as I mentioned, and I like the recommendations you included in your conclusion. I agree totally with you to rethink and about the importance of redesign the curriculum which we use usually and deliver to our students to prepare them for this global competencies. The curriculum itself in our high schools, I mean in the colleges, prepare teachers still have lack of the real contact actually. I mean by this that we need to focus on the international studies and international culture. We need to culturalize these teachers when we prepare them to be able to work with these different diversities, number one. Number two, also, we need to think about adding more practical skills and training to our teachers. Practicum courses, like, for example, one course never enough. Based on my experience, I believe that one course not enough at all to prepare teachers. We have to, for example, give them like 3 or 4 courses, one at the beginning to let them check the attitude, if they interest and really like the career of education or being teachers. Then in number 2 or level 2, we can assign them some activities and engage them in real teaching practices. Now in number 3 or 4, we can assign them to develop their lessons, for example, and show how they being able to deal with different level of students, different cultures, different languages, put them under this stress or pressure before they finish. If they able, really, they can continue and they can improve their competencies. I will address all these needs in my presentation tomorrow by focusing on the importance of professional development and creating what I call leadership teaching skills. This is the most important component we need to add to our curriculum. Thank you for this great study. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I agree with everything you just said.
Any further comments? We have a couple minutes left with Dr. Alicia, not Felicia, Alicia. My apologies.
That's okay.
Dr. Batts raised his hand. If we could unmute Dr. Batts.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. The presentation was very awesome. I got a quick question. My question was surrounding the Global Competency Aptitude Test. Is that assessment public?
I had to pay for that. It was a fee per person who took it. And actually, the one girl who helped develop it graduated from the school district that I taught at. So she was very involved in it. But yes, I actually got to take the assessment first to kind of see, and it blew me away and kind of made me feel bad about my results. But yes, it is something that's available, but it does have a fee to it.
And the reason why I'm asking is because I teach in a suburb outside of Washington, D.C. And I teach at a school where it's 60% Caucasian, about 25% Asian, and less than 10% African American. And we're trying to push culturally responsive education and an inclusive school environment. And I'm wondering if this exam will be something good to give to my teachers, so then we can then build that practice within our teaching, especially in the English department.
I think it would be a wonderful use. You would have your eyes open to where people are lacking and where people are have a strength in. I think it would give you that opportunity to kind of create teams to help balance out the strengths and weaknesses that could then get you in the step in the right direction. This assessment can actually be given to students too.
Yeah, so if you can shoot me a link of that, and I wouldn't mind, purchasing that for my department. So thank you.
I can absolutely do that.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. We've come to 3 o'clock and believe we're going to be a little bit ahead of schedule here, but there will be another panel. There will be a full discussion of all the presentations, including the video, before we end today. And that's going to be led by Dr. Nabil Takriti, who will go back and reflect on the most critical points. So I hope you're taking notes, so we'll be ready to come up with sort of a shared vision and recommendation, at least based upon what we've heard today with regards to our primary question, which is how do we reimagine teachers' global teaching competencies to advance educational equity? And so what we're thinking about here is what are the implications and the inferences from all that we're hearing. And in our next presentation, Mr. Andrew Peterson who's a linguistics specialist, is going to talk to us a little bit more. He has a very engaging presentation, and I think he's going to do a couple of breakout groups, 2 or 3 breakout groups, where you'll have an opportunity to be in a room and have some dialogue with each other. But I will let him tell you about that. So I'm going to share my screen and do the formal introduction so that we can continue our agenda. So we just heard from Dr. Alicia. And so now we are moving to our next speaker. Thank you all for the comments in the chat room. And we look forward to more dialogue as we continue. Feel free to get up and get your coffee, get your water, whatever you need to do while we are making these transitions. So I bring to you at this time, Mr. Andrew Peterson. And I know he's happy because he wanted extra time. And because we're doing so well on time, he's actually going to have that in order to take you through some very engaging activities. Andrew has a master's in education in TESOL, Administration of Overseas Schools, and also the College of New Jersey. And he has a degree from Duke University. And he loves teaching English. What can I say about Mr. Peterson? I've been working with him now for going on 4 years with this project, 3 or 4 years. And he loves teaching English to international students and teaches both ESL and linguistics, and believes that an awareness of an appreciation of other cultures is crucial for all students as well as teachers in today's world, and that the opportunity for students of different backgrounds to interact with each other and learn forward about one another's cultures is an invaluable part of the overall educational process. He brings us over 20 years of English teaching experience, both in the United States, around the world, Spain, Turkey, Mexico, China, and I suspect a few more. He was born in San Francisco, grew up in Sydney, Australia. He's traveled extensively. He speaks French, Spanish, and some Turkish. And you'll be able to talk with Andrew about cross-cultural communications, business English, linguistics, second language acquisition, sociolinguistics, and more. And his presentation is entitled Walk With Me. Walk With Me, I love that title. And so in his presentation, he is going to be very interactive, so get ready, please don't leave us. We don't want to lose you when we go into the breakout rooms. And he believes that no matter where we teach, we cannot be effective as teachers unless we realize, first of all, that each student is different. And so 4 questions guiding his presentation are on the screen. I'm going to give you now to Mr. Andrew Peterson. Let's give him a round of applause as he comes to us. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Mr. Peterson, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pittman. I appreciate that. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And I see we have a large audience, and I know everybody here has their own experiences and probably knows a lot about this topic, even if they're not aware they know a lot about this topic. And you're coming at it from all different cultures and perspectives and jobs. I assume we have administrators and teachers and students and everything here. So I'm very happy to see it. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and I hope please bear with us as we do that. And hopefully it will work. So let me share my screen with you. Right. All right, so I've entitled this presentation, Walk With Me, because I think it's important to walk in the shoes of the people we are trying to teach. I don't think we as teachers, and I think Dr. Lippert's study showed exactly this point when she said that teachers were unsure of what global competency is. They saw themselves as unprepared, even though they may have quantitatively scored well in that global competency assessment. Their actual self-awareness was not what it could be. But I think we as teachers don't have all of the answers as we often think we should. And I don't think it's necessary to, because I think the students can bring what is most important to the learning process, which is their own experiences, and can learn from each other. I see in my students, I think the most of the learning is, and I hate to say it, probably done not necessarily in class, but on the way to class, in the getting a coffee during classes, where they interact with each other and talk to each other and learn about where they're from and what their own experiences are, and share these with each other. So I'd like to do an interactive reflection on how we as teachers can better understand our students and try to see the world from their perspective. In other words, make the learning process less teacher-centered and more student-centered. So the first question we have is, how can we better—
Dr. Peterson, just so you're aware, your screen is not shared.
Oh, it's not shared.
No.
All right, I'm sorry. Hold on here. Let me go back. Zoom. All right, here. Oh, okay, that was my mistake. All righty, share screen.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so Walk With Me is the title, because I think it's necessary to put on the shoes of our students, walk in their shoes. And I hope to make this interactive and show how we as teachers can better understand our students. I think it's something we often forget. We're too focused on what needs to be done, the pressures of getting through the curriculum, that we forget that these students are, amazing sources of knowledge, maybe not academically per se, but experientially. And we need to change. Instead of trying to always think about how we can make them more globally competent, maybe we should start with ourselves and see how we can change our perspective to that of our students. So first question, how can we better understand others? This is just a general question. Samantha, would it be possible to put people into small groups and just discuss this question for 3 or 4 minutes?
Not a problem.
And so how can we better understand others? Think of your experience, and this is more than just with other international people from different countries, but anybody we meet anywhere who we assume is one thing, but maybe a lot more than that. So the question to answer is, how can we better understand others? Take a few minutes, and you may want to even introduce yourself to the people in your breakout room and just discuss this topic, let's say 5 minutes.
And should they
Welcome back, everybody.
All right, well, we're back. I see most of my group is back. We had 5 people, I believe, 5 or 6 people. And I see most of them are back. And we're waiting for the others. Hope they didn't get
Everyone's
lost.
back in the room.
Everyone's back in the room. Okay, I saw cameras off, so I wasn't sure. So everybody can turn their cameras back on for our continue. And we turn it back over to you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pittman. Yes, well, I was in a breakout room, and I heard from a teacher who was, it's very interesting. She thinks that and she teaches from 1st grade to 5th grade Arabic language, and she has changed her teaching style, she said, from about 10 years ago, from a very teacher-centered one to a student-centered one. And even though she has a very high workload with 100 students a day she sees, she still finds it very important to try to get to know the students as people.
Do you want to go back to sharing your screen, or do we not need to?
Yeah, I will. Let me go back to here. Hold on one second. Share screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I hope everybody had some interesting conversation and maybe got to know a couple other people, a little bit about them. We're going to be doing this a few times during this presentation. But Samantha and Dr. Pittman, please let me know on time, and whether it goes on, you can always cut me off, no problem. So the next question, Dr. Pittman showed us a video at the beginning of this conference in which teachers and administrators were interviewed as to how they would define global competence. And there are many models out there. If you, as Dr. Lippert showed us, various models, they all are somewhat similar. But I would be interested in hearing from you, since everybody here has their own experience. So how would you define global competence? Maybe here we can do this in a chat instead of because we'll get to a few more breakout rooms in a minute. But I assume everybody has access to the chat button on their Zoom. Can you just enter, whoever would like to, enter a sentence or two about how you personally would define global competence? Not necessarily what, the models say or what you have read, but think about from your own perspective, and just please enter it in the chat.
Do you want us sharing what we did in our groups, or are we going to get back?
Oh, yeah, actually, what you did in your groups. Yeah, can we do that? Is there a way to share what we did in our groups?
Well, I guess we could have a spokesperson from each group tell what your group, what they came up with.
Okay, actually, you know what? I kind of would like to do that. So before we get to how would you define global competence, can we get maybe one person from each group to give a very brief summary of what you talked about? Anybody who would like to, you have to unmute yourself. And yes.
So
Dr. Al-Tikriti?
Just very briefly, we had the suggestion that perhaps the internet could be better used as a portal to the world everywhere. And then it was acknowledged by the group that that's not necessarily an easy thing to do and has proven very problematic in the past. But at the same time, it was suggested that that might be something that could be improved upon. And continuing on that thread, I mentioned a situation where someone has actually facilitated the use of those in refugee camps from Syria as to serve as Arabic language counterparts to Arabic language learners in the US and elsewhere. And that's at least one example of an attempt to use the internet to bridge the gap between people. I'm sure the results are mixed and very problematic, but that's at least a stab that is an example of what could be done.
Exactly. Technology has such potential and we don't always use it, right, to its full extent. Absolutely. And that's a great idea, right?
Okay, well, I'll go. In my group, we came out with 4. So if you're in my group, you can unmute and chime in on these if you like. But one of the first things that I heard was in regards to how do we understand each other is that we need to pay more attention to each other's personal stories. And we can use, there are ways of using technology to do that by allowing our students to use technology to make videos of their environment or videos telling their stories or whatever. The second was having those genuine conversations, not just with our colleagues, but with students as well. Genuine conversations where we actually show interest in that person in terms of their home environment, as well as what they do at school, which takes us to the third thing was environment. Observing our environment, observing what our learners do in the environment. We need to look at their actions and their habits because those can be indicators of their culture. And so as teachers, to be competent and to understand each other as well as our students, we need to be more observant. The fourth was have more class discussions instead of being more teacher-centered, be more learner-centered. And so I think that these 4 items really go in hand with the 2 that what we just heard about, changing our teaching style, as well as internet usability. We're going to show you some exemplars of ways that students have actually been able to use technology to do some of these things. And that's coming up a little later in the program today.
Thank you, Dr. Pittman. Yes, I think, yeah, technology again is so useful if used in the right way. Does anybody else would like to contribute what you talked about in your small group? Feel free to unmute and just begin talking if you do. Okay, well, we're going to have more opportunity to interact. Let me go on to the next slide, and this is where we can what's happening here? Oops, sorry about that. Okay, so let us use the chat room here, the chat function. And the question is, how would you personally define global competence? Feel free to enter your first name before you write the chat or not. But anybody who wishes to, please throw out some terms or some sentences that you think define what global competence means to you.
I'd say not everyone's in the chat. We have quite a few people there, but not everyone's there. So if you are looking for the chat or you can't find it, you can follow your.
Yeah, can everyone see the chat that everyone writes? think you should be able to if you click on chat. It looks like we have, feel free to keep on writing, but I see a comment from Anthony Batts, non-academic factors. Yes, I don't think global competence, it goes way beyond the classroom. We all have the opportunity to interact on a daily basis. Well, maybe not during the pandemic, maybe through Zoom sometimes, but to interact with other people and people from different cultures. And a lot of it is natural, everyday behaviors rather than just in the classroom. Professor Ghanem Al-Bustami writes, accepting each other's and respecting diversity. Exactly. If Anthony Batts or Professor Ghanem Al-Bustami would like to unmute themselves, they could and expand on that, feel free. We have a chat from Yasmin. Understanding and respecting others and accepting the differences between people. Yes, yes, exactly. Understanding and respecting others, again, respecting, accepting is not always easy to do, as we all know personally, but we have to try.
Dr. Andrew to comment. Now I am unmute, so I can just add more ideas about the meaning, what I mean by accepting each other's and respect the diversity, as also followed by one of my students, accepting the differences between people, which is mean that we need to really interact and understand what exactly these differences means. I like the term also, the unique of each one, very important to show our uniqueness in different situations when we speak and use our accent or language in our way, using our body language, for example, very important. So we need to teach and to train our teachers how to understand the way people from different cultures speak. For example, moving their heads or eyes, fingers, etc. And you are expert in this area. These are examples about the sign language, the cultural language, if you allow me to use this term, express the people feeling that I am unique, I am something different from others, but I like myself, so others will like me. We need to encourage teachers to accept and to draw their activities and dialogue and conversation with their students based on these cultural signs or figures or expression. By this, we will be able to accept and respect their way and their method and their approach in speaking and communicate with us as teachers.
Yeah, very well put. Very well put. Exactly. Every student is unique. They have different ways, maybe depending on their language background or their culture of expressing themselves or their personality. And we have to understand the nonverbal cues that they give, which everybody gives, no matter what culture they're coming from, right? And some cultures may seem more expressive than others, but that doesn't mean the cultures that seem less expressive have anything less to say. They just need to be given the opportunity to do so. Yeah, very well put.
Do you want to move do you want to move your slides, or are we?
Oh yeah. Let me move this slide here. Yeah, well, the question, how would you define global competency? I just want to read the chat response from Yasmin: understanding and respecting others and accepting the differences between people. Samantha, please go to the reactions icon at the bottom of or top of your screen and raise your hand to let me know if you'd like to be unmuted. Yes, because of the size of the Zoom, you will need to go and to the raise hand icon, which should be under reactions, and let Samantha know. Dr. Pittman, personal stories, genuine conversations, observe learners' actions in the environment, more class discussions, genuine conversations. I think it's so important that we do, even if it's only 30 seconds, 15 seconds to talk to a student and ask them a personal question. For us, it means nothing, but as a teacher, but for a student, I think it can mean a lot. Again, feel free to request to be unmuted and begin talking, anybody who would like to. Let me just read a few more of these. We have Noura Al-Naimi. Observe different backgrounds with an open mind. The open mind is critical, exactly. Maha says understanding and respecting other people's culture and background. Shaika Al-Zayudi says skills and values giving to our next generation and let them know and investigate the world. Exactly. You're right. Let them investigate and develop their enthusiasm. Oh, sorry about that. Munir Yassine, the ability to deal with the big mosaic of cultures worldwide. Understand how many cultures are out there, exactly. Peggy Kong, the ability to understand and interact with people from different backgrounds in a respectful manner. Shaima, combination of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values successfully applied to global issues or intercultural situation. Alicia, Dr. Lippert, open to all cultures and aware of what makes us unique, ability to interact with others. Exactly, everybody is unique and we have to learn how to interact with all. Dr. Al-Takriti, ability to understand various universals like current population movements, sports hierarchies, outcomes, politics, broad regional history.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go
I
ahead.
want to thank you. I want to thank you for this question, and I want to thank Prof. Ghanem for clarifying my comment in the chat. I want only to add one statement or one sentence that global competences, you can say that this summit is a good example for that. You give us the chance to speak, to share our ideas, to do what we, to say what we want to say, or to share what we are thinking about. And we are like from different backgrounds, from different cultures, from different, say, countries. So this is a good example for global competences.
Yes, thank you, Yasmin. Exactly. Your students always have, thank you very much. Your students always have a wealth of information, whether they be, no matter where they're from or how, their age, and trying to pull it out of them is, I think, one of the keys.
Yeah, and I would just like to say that what I'm hearing is excellent, because as I typed in the chat room, I think that if we put all these ideas together, we can already start developing a strong framework for discovering imperatives for change in terms of what principles should guide our curriculum as we look at how we can change the way that we prepare our teachers to engage in the classroom. So I think that we're already, as early as we are in this program, we have a lot of shared ideas here, a lot of shared visions and recommendations for future direction. So everybody is really on track with their comments. I think this is wonderful.
Yes,
So
thank you.
Yep. So we have about 25 minutes.
Okay.
About 20 minutes actually for you to continue. And I know you
Okay.
have some additional slides.
Yes. All right, let me get to them. Let's just read HP, skills, values, and behaviors that prepare young people to thrive in more diversity. Amanda, being able to interact with people from other cultures in a kind and generous way. Yes, very well put. Kindness is the key. And, you know, we all can improve our personal behavior. Sheikha, skills and values, giving to the next generation, letting them know and investigate the world, even in social life or technology. Exactly. And Dr. Pittman, cultural language, observing hand, face, eyes, actions. These are all ways people communicate, not just with words. Very important. And I did want to say that anybody who has traveled in a country where you don't speak any of their language knows that you can still communicate even if you don't know the language of a person. In fact, nonverbal communication comprises, some people say, 90% of communication, even in our own language. So observing is critical. And exactly, as Dr. Pittman just said, I think if we put all these ideas together, we can develop a strong framework for discovering an imperative for change. All right, thank you. Now, let us go to the next slide. No matter where we teach, we cannot be effective as teachers unless we realize that each student is different. That's why a single curriculum. It's why sometimes it's necessary for, you know, what the state demands in America at the local level, in other countries at the national level. Yet we have to retain the flexibility to realize that each student is different, learns in different ways, has different learning needs. It's not easy to do, but I think that's, you know, oftentimes more critical than trying to get through the textbook, as we all are, as teachers, are caught in that dilemma. Now we're going to go to breakout room again using this question. What strategies can teachers use to get to know their students better? So can we think of some concrete examples in which teachers can get to know, can learn about their students? So let's again take about 5 minutes to discuss this with whomever we're put in the breakout room with. And Samantha, can we do the breakout room?
Sure, I'll open them right now.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take about 5 minutes, and again, introduce yourselves to your fellow people in the breakout room. Yes, welcome back, everybody, from the breakout room. I think most of us are back now. Yes, we had some breakout groups. Would anybody from a particular group like to share? Give us something interesting you heard in that one, and how we can better get to know our students. Yasmin, could I ask? Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I add one point to my points, Yasmin colleague?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
I can encourage my students learning from experience. They like to tell us about their experience. They learn from each other. This is the good point I want to add to Yasmin's points. They like to listen to others' experience. They like and they learn too much from this strategy.
Exactly. They enjoy listening to others and expressing what their own experiences are.
Yeah, they like it.
I really like that, because that was on my list, was listening activities. I think that oftentimes we're so busy talking or engaging and sharing information that we don't take the time to listen. And we can learn just as much from listening as we do from talking. And so I think students need to also learn how to listen to each other. Many times we think we know how to listen, but we don't.
Exactly.
Another thing that I was thinking is oftentimes, we talk about social culture interaction together, even such things as having a day per week where you eat lunch with your students, because sharing food is a social event, but you can also share differences in terms of the kinds of foods that we like. And that's a way of getting to know a person. And also in our group, I'll let Anthony share, because he had some really great ideas, and so did Maya and Sheikha.
All right, great. Yeah, I can definitely go in and share for our group. So this is a really good conversation, and the idea behind our group is that we all kind of teach at different. We interact with students at different grade levels. Okay, so based on our group, we talked about how we can give students a platform to express their own opinions. So personally, I use this item called it's called Notebook Time. And I present a quote or a question where students it's a low stakes activity where students can have an opportunity to bring in their perspective about what has been, discussed in class. We talked about how, specific middle school programs have an intentional plan about student advocacy and building those relationships. So the idea that students really feel comfortable to share their perspectives will be an activity to pretty much learn more about our students. And we talked about other activities that we can include in our curriculum for kindergarten students, especially for those who are still teaching through the online platform. Have them bring something personal within their room that they can show on the camera, and have them actually discuss why and how that item is important. That all goes back into the idea of building relationships, so we can then learn more about our students moving forward.
And I think that works for any age. That the show and tell thing is just as good for college kids, or we often forget something like that is very useful.
So how does getting to know our students fit with or align with being globally competent? How is that a part of being globally competent? Anybody want to respond to that? Getting to know our students.
I can add something there, Dr. Pittman.
Yeah.
When I think about my situation or my school, I think when we give kids students a platform. I'll call it a show and tell, for lack of a better phrase, just that opportunity to share their experiences, to share about their culture. In my school, we are, quite frankly, a predominantly Caucasian school. However, we have our largest ethnicity group is Asian, kind of Pacific Islander, and they when students with different backgrounds coming from different cultures have an opportunity to share and kind of show and tell their experiences, whatever that may be, whether it's the food they eat, a holiday that they celebrate, a particular piece of their heritage. It just enables a teacher to, it expands their competence. I just think it builds their global competence when they, instead of kind of a cookie cutter approach to that show and tell, when they can really enable students to really talk about, really be proud of, and give them the opportunity to be really, really proud of where they're from and what their culture is like. It just really, in my opinion, in a small setting like a school, it just builds global competence, the more that you can do that.
Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you for that answer. And I've seen that too. One way that I've seen that done, Steve, is students might be given, they have one day a week where students teach if you have a student body that's diverse in your class, and there are several different languages. Give those students who speak different languages an opportunity to teach the other students in the class something in their language, so that the other students, even though you're the teacher, are not proficient in those languages, you can give your students an opportunity to share their language, because it makes them feel like their language is important.
Mm-hmm. Great point.
Yes, can I add something, please?
Yes.
What I shared with my small group in breakout rooms, I spoke about the the first assessment that I have with my kids every beginning of the year. So a part of this assessment is I have interview with each student alone. So I have questions for them, what they like, and I let them speak about themselves, what they prefer, what the preferable subject for them, what is their hobbies. So I can have a profile for each student. And through these questions, I try to give the student the writing activity, something about his hobby and blah, blah, blah. So to connect all these parts together. And then I can give an example for non-native students, because I'm an Arabic teacher. I am an Arabic teacher. And if I have an English student or non-native, so I can make a partner for him, someone who may be weak in English, but good in Arabic. So each one help the other. So yes, they feel that they are they are like a small teacher, or they have the teacher role, and they feel that they are confident. So no problem if I learn one word every day, but yes, I am a teacher at the same time. Yes. So and then I have when I have this oral interview with them for each student alone, I have a good idea, clear idea about this student. The student feel when he feel that I care about what he like, and I want to listen for him. So he speak about what he like, what he don't like. Sometimes we speak about if he fear from something also. So they feel comfortable, and I have a clear conversation with them. I have a profile for each student, and from this profile, I start my activities for them. So they can write about their hobbies. They can listen for a text about something they like. So this is my way to know my students.
Exactly. And Yasmin, you also made a great suggestion about getting a student who maybe doesn't like to write to draw. I thought that was
Yes.
very interesting.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes if he don't like to write, for example, because he's weak in writing. So I don't want him to feel that he's weak in some area. I know that
Right.
he's weak now, but I can support him. But during this interview, I can ask him to draw or to describe what he wants in using different skill. Not writing
Exactly.
only. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Well said. Very well said.
Thank
Shaima,
you.
are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I want to say in the beginning hello to everybody here. I just want to give a point that different cultures inside the classroom can make very difficult learning for the students and for even the teacher to understand her students. So I think, especially in the early age students, it's difficult for the teacher to understand the students' background or even to sit with him or he explain for her what is the culture of him or something like that. So I think the easiest way is for the teacher to observe the students, even by studying, by their drawing, by their learning. And after that, after she gathered all these information, she can have a contact with the parents to understand more the students or to understand more the background of the students. This gonna be easier for the teacher to understand the background of the students itself.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It might be a little more work for the teacher at the beginning, but it will make things easier
Yes.
overall.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Well, our time is, I think we're running out of time here, but let me just get through a couple more things. But the main point is that it is difficult to ensure educational equity for all unless we endeavor to get to know our students and learn about where they are coming from. It comes down to the basics. And we have to take the time, whether it be in class, in small groups, through some of these suggestions that were made, or even outside of class, in the lunchroom or in the hallway, just to ask small questions and learn about our students. We often forget that, given the hustle and bustle of teaching. I don't think we're going to have time to get into this one, but I was going to ask what factors in a classroom and school could prevent teachers from understanding their students. And here I'm talking about administrative factors, curriculum factors, pressure of teaching to a standardized test, that kind of thing. But that's a question to think about. How well do you know the world? Do we have, let me just ask Samantha, how much time do we have left?
You have approximately I can allow 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. Here I was going to get into your personal experiences, and everybody I'm sure has something interesting to add about how much you have met people from different countries or traveled. I think but it is something to talk about. Next time you meet somebody from another country, ask them about their culture. I mean, if you go and buy a sandwich somewhere and the person serving you is from a different country, ask them. It doesn't have to be in a school environment. In fact, there's probably more opportunities outside of school. We all know the iceberg example, that the words, tonality, body language, and gestures are only a small part of what a person actually is. There is much more below it to try to learn about. I always teach, when I teach sociolinguistics, I talk about the Hofstede framework of 5 dimensions of viewing cultures. Very interesting to get into, and it really opens up your eyes to your own culture. Everybody, I would recommend looking up Gert Hofstede's work. This was my last point, was to challenge not necessarily only our students' perspective, but our own perspective. And you can all look this up on YouTube.
You can finish it, Mr. Anderson. You can finish it.
Well, this is it's about a little 3-minute video, but it's quite fascinating. The future of publishing. It's just a way to change your perspective. I'm not going to go through it. I'm sorry.
I'm saying you can go ahead and proceed.
I will actually. I'd prefer to get to another video I had, but this is just called "The Future of Publishing." If anybody would like to take note and listen to it on YouTube. My last question: how can we change our perspective to be not just teachers imparting knowledge, but fellow learners on a journey with our students? Let's change our perspective entirely and consider we're not teachers even if we're in the classroom anymore. Just think about that for a moment. We are fellows, we are learners. How can we, if we see ourselves through the eyes of a learner, we're going into class to learn, not to teach, to learn. What can we do to change our perspective to be fellow learners on a journey with our students? Dr. Pittman, can we put one last breakout group for a couple minutes?
Yes.
Okay. And Samantha, we can mix them up or anything you wish.
Sure. For how long?
Dr. Pittman, how long should we do it? Maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Would that be enough? I mean, would that be possible?
I think 5 minutes is good.
5 minutes. Okay. So the question is for this breakout room, how can we change our perspective to be not just teachers imparting knowledge, but actual learners on a journey with our students? Okay, here we are. Let's just go. Okay, welcome back. Are we all, is everybody with us, I think? Great. I had some great comments in my breakout room. I'd like those participants to share just very briefly because we don't have much time. Shaima, you have your hand up? I think you gotta unmute.
Yes, I want to share our information that we just mentioned in the group. Actually, in the United Arab Emirates, most schools here are using one of the important things about the culture, which is International Day. We have it once a year, but it's a good thing to understand other culture. It's a very nice thing that students wearing their clothes, the uniforms, to express to the other about their culture is a very nice day. We like it. It's like from the morning until the afternoon. But this is going to help because it is once a year. And we have another suggestion that it's going to be a good idea if the teacher give an assignment for each student inside the classroom to make an assignment about their culture or to choose a country and to give and information about the culture, and like make it as a presentation, give some activities for the students. So if this teacher just give each student twice a week or once a week, this is going to help the students inside the classroom to express their cultures and to understand each other's and to be closer with each other.
Exactly. Excellent. Very good. I agree.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yasmin, you had a good point.
I can share real quick. In our group, we had a brief but really good discussion, and some of the things that came up were just celebrating a culture of the month, so to speak, and that might involve bringing in food and different things specific to that culture. Book clubs, or not necessarily a book club, but maybe reading books about a certain culture, collectively everyone reading the same book. We talked about really capitalizing on what students are interested in terms of they might show interest maybe in the Chinese culture or the Japanese culture or whatever, and then really capitalizing on that interest through projects that then foster a lot of discussion and giving kids the opportunity to discuss that. I thought that was great in our breakout room. And one of our breakout room members also shared about beginning each lesson with an interesting fact about another culture.
Yeah.
And showing how that really shows how the teacher is kind of alongside of his or her students learning about another culture. So I thought it was really good discussion in our group.
Excellent, excellent. Book club, I actually did a talents club for my students where they would play music from their countries, dances, songs, sing songs, which was quite a success.
Yes, Doctor, I can share now because they unmute me.
Yes, please do.
Yes, the point that I shared with the breakout rooms was that the teacher need to think that he is a student or she is a student because because he has or she has the power because she's older than the student. So she has the knowledge and the student, they don't have anything. She need to know, and this is what I know about my students and about myself. 10 years ago, I feel that I'm the powerful one and they need to know what I have. They need only to take from my knowledge. And this is what was a big fault, that I change all my teaching style and I make it like student-centered, and that I need to listen to them, learn from them, because I can learn from everyone, older or younger than me.
Exactly. That's perfect. Wow. And what a great comment, boy. You've changed. The more you've taught, the more you've changed and become able to learn from them.
Yes, and I feel that every day I learn more from all people around me, and this like clusterize my character, make me more open, make me like I can understand others more than before, make like my vision for the world is like wider than before.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Yeah.
Thank you for giving me a chance to share my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for contributing. I think they're great. I really do. We have Munir has raised his hand, and Dr. Harlan, I don't know if you're there. I'd like you to share what you said in our group. If you're there, maybe after Munir.
Yeah. Munir? Hi. Good afternoon. Yeah.
Hello.
This is Munir from UAE.
Welcome.
Yeah, I shared with the breakout room one of the practices that we do in the school, which is the after-school extracurricular activities. In the classroom, the teacher leads the students, while in the after-school extracurricular activities and the clubs, we give the charge to the students. And most of the teachers are just members in these groups, and we take the instructions and some tasks from the students. So during the school day, we instruct the students, but after school, the process is in the opposite direction.
Yes. So you flip the classroom completely.
Exactly.
At the end of the day. Perfect. Perfect. And teachers are willing to participate?
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's
And
excellent.
we love it. We love it. Yes.
Really?
Yeah, because we give the students more confidence. They play the major role in the tasks. They give us instructions. They help us to understand what they like more. In the clubs, for example, sometimes they have something and they are professional at something that we don't know anything about it. So they help us to have the minimum in it.
Right. And what kind of clubs? Can you give us a few quickly?
We have robotics club. We have chess club. We have some different sports. We have different clubs. Yeah.
Arts, book club.
Coding. Yeah, coding, computer.
Excellent. Wow. That's great. Wow. Good, great idea.
Okay, we're gonna have to finish up, but I just want to remind everyone, I knew this was gonna be an engaging session because we all have so much to share, but keep in mind that at 5 o'clock, after this next presentation, there will be time for everyone to join one of the speakers in their own breakout rooms if you want to continue discussion of these issues. Thank you so much. And so I'm going to allow Mr. Anderson is going to finish up now because our next speaker has indicated that he is ready to come.
Okay. All right. I'll finish up right now. Dr. Harlan, are you there? He had a great comment. He can fit. I wanted him to finish up for me.
Oh yes, go ahead and finish the comment.
Dr. Harlan, are you there?
Thank you so much. I'll say quickly that I agree with all of the speakers and supporters, and I say that we should adopt an asset-based lens for our students and depart from deficit-based thinking about our students and understand what our students bring to the journey, and we can capitalize on that and build a foundation on that, getting to know our students and starting the journey with the students and enjoying their talents. You can never touch a rose so fragrant with a dew without part of that rose remaining with you.
Yeah, I love it. That said much better than I could ever say. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Harlan, and thanks everybody.
And we're looking forward to seeing those videos that you have too, because I know all the presentations are going to be posted. So those of you who are here, you will receive access to all of these PowerPoints. So you'll be able to go through them with your own, in your own environment, to go back and review. And I'm hoping that that will help all of you to continue your learning on this journey. We thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you. I think you all have so much to say, and I'm so impressed.
Okay, so we have taken a wonderful walk. That was certainly a walk with me. Thank you so much. So we address questions like, how can we ensure educational equity for all? How important is it to gain a new perspective? How can we change our perspective to be not just teachers, pushers of knowledge, but also on a journey with our students? How can we encourage students to pursue learning on their own? And how can we give them the confidence they need to succeed? So we have learned a lot in this session. Thank you all so very much. And so we now hope that you have lots of notes, and there's going to be a report following the summit where we will share out everything that we are learning in terms of how we will go forward with a new way of thinking, a way, as it was put, get away from our deficit thinking. So we now bring to you technology. We're going to take on a little bit of different dimension here. Technology beyond the walls. We're going to look at some ways of creating equity and inclusion. And we have Dr. Distinger with us, who's going to share his screen very shortly. He is a principal of a school. So we've been hearing from teachers, from professors, and other leaders, but now we hear from a school administrator himself. Technology beyond walls. using technology for equity and inclusion. Dr. Dissinger conducted a study within his school where he looked at the lived experiences of students in a laptop environment. They all had what we call one-on-one laptops. And he had some interesting facts here about teachers across America. And I think some of these points or these facts might apply to what's going on in other countries as well. But we are ready now to turn it over to Dr. Dissinger and hear more about what he has to share with us. Thank you, Dr. Dissinger. You may now share your screen because I've stopped sharing, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Pittman. I really do appreciate your introduction, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my research findings with all of you. And I do think it does apply to building equity and understanding equity in our educational systems. The way that my presentation is structured, I will go through some background information that was really drawn right out of my dissertation, and then really the ending or the bulk of my presentation is what I call key takeaways. And these are takeaways that I think apply to anybody at any level, whether you are in the elementary arena, the middle school arena, the high school arena, the graduate, undergraduate or graduate arena. I think these takeaways apply to any one of those levels. My particular area of expertise is with middle level education. I'm a middle school principal, as Dr. Pittman pointed out. My story is somewhat interesting in that I came to the middle school back in 1987 as a science teacher. I taught in this middle school where I conducted my research. I taught there for 20 years. And then right about the time, around 2007, I left that middle school and as a teacher, and I became an elementary school principal, but still within the same district. And this district is in a suburb of Philadelphia, southeast of Philadelphia. I served as an elementary school principal for 15 years. And then I came back to that middle school where I started my journey and came back as the principal. And I've been serving in that role now for about 4.5 years. So that's just a little bit of background about me. And so let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll jump into the presentation. I do have to confess that I am sitting in a hotel room right now. My wife and I are enjoying a quick getaway vacation to Charleston, South Carolina. It's beautiful, a beautiful city. I may have to skip out of the 5 o'clock breakout room. I'm very sorry, Dr. Pittman, but my wife and I have dinner reservations later tonight in Charleston. So I apologize for that, but you will see at the end of my presentation, my contact information is there, and I would be more than happy if anyone has any questions or would like to discuss what I'm going to share with you in a minute, would like to discuss any of it further. I encourage you to please email me, reach out to me, and I would be happy to talk with you, answer your questions. We can Zoom together, we can email, whatever works best for you, talk over the phone. I would be happy to do that. I'm always more than willing to do that. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. So just make sure this works. And I'm gonna go ahead and make it full screen. Okay, so really technology beyond walls, reaching and teaching for equity. And as I said, this is a Pennsylvania Laptop Initiative conducted in a middle school outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So just a couple things. I think we can probably, at least I hope so, I think we can all agree on the following items about teaching and learning. I think all of us, no matter what level we're teaching in or working in terms of education, we want our students to think critically. We want them to explore and communicate, collaborate, and we certainly want them to develop problem-solving skills and learn from different resources, varied resources. We want them to be healthy, to be well. And part of being healthy and having a strong well-being is to know your purpose. We want our students to find their purpose and to be prepared for the challenges that will confront them. Because when they are prepared to confront them challenges, they then can precipitate positive change in whatever arena they may find themselves in. In terms of teaching, we want our teachers to critically evaluate traditional approaches to teaching and learning and to equip students to manage and direct their learning. I think we could all agree that so often, and I heard it mentioned in one of the breakout rooms, so often we find learning to be very teacher directed in many cases. And really what we want to do is make the shift to helping it, making it be more student-centered, where students really take ownership of their own learning and begin to direct their learning. Technology, the last item here, technology, more so today than ever before, technology gives schools the unprecedented, like never before, opportunity to help students experience joy and motivation in learning, to develop their sense of purpose and to take ownership in directing their learning, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their socioeconomic status, and certainly regardless of their ability to learn. So I think we can all agree on those things. And I did want to throw this quote out there. This is a quote that during my lit review when I was writing my dissertation, and all through my dissertation, this particular quote, this source that I found resonated with me, I think more than anything, that when implemented properly, technology can produce significant gains in student achievement and boost engagement, particularly, and this is the part that has always stuck with me and continues to stick with me, particularly among students who are most at risk. And most at risk can mean a lot of different things. And I think that part really served as a driving force behind the study that I conducted. So now more than ever, as I stated earlier, technology is very prevalent in our schools. The question that I grappled with in my study was, is it having the impact on teaching and learning that is required to enable all students to be successful in the 21st century? And this is certainly where that equity piece comes in. We have it, as you all know, technology is more prevalent now than it ever has been. And certainly since the pandemic, or now that we're still in a pandemic, it's even more prevalent than ever. But is it really having the impact on teaching and learning that is required to enable all students to be successful in the 21st century? So just a couple things, and this is information that comes right out of my dissertation. Knowledge from this study helps us answer the overarching question, whoops, sorry about that. The overarching question from this summit, how do we reimagine educational policy to create and support innovative pedagogical practices to ensure educational equity for all diverse learners in emerging learning environments? And I hope that through the information that I share over the next 15 minutes or so, that we can gain ground on that particular question. So a little bit of background in terms of the study that I conducted. As I stated earlier, it was conducted in a middle school. The school where I currently serve as the principal has a total enrollment of approximately 1,000 students across grades 6 7 and 8. So these are young adolescents. This school has been operating in a full one-to-one laptop computer environment for about 5 years. And when I say one-to-one laptop computer environment, what I mean is that every student has a Chromebook, their own Chromebook. They are issued a Chromebook when they come to the school in 6th grade. They keep that Chromebook in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and they keep it through all the breaks. They keep it during the winter break. They keep it during spring break. They keep it during summer break. They do not turn that Chromebook back in until they leave the middle school at the end of 8th grade. In addition to every student having a Chromebook, every teacher has a laptop computer. It is, in most cases, a MacBook, and every teacher has a smartboard mounted or on wheels, mobile, in their classroom. And in addition to that, the third most critical piece to what we define, or I define, as a one-to-one laptop computer environment is that we operate completely on a learning management system. I know when I did my dissertation at Drexel, or my graduate program at Drexel, we used Blackboard. In this particular study in my school, we use Canvas, which is, again, just one other form of a learning management system. The school where this was conducted is a predominantly white upper middle class suburb of Philadelphia. The data that I collected for this particular study was through individual and focus group interviews with teachers. I did not interview students. It's interesting, my assistant principal right now is doing her proposal defense very soon, and her dissertation is going to be more on interviewing students. So the two of us together will have quite a bit of discussions about this and interesting information. And also, most of my data was collected before the pandemic. A little bit of, I think I had 1 or 2 interviews that I conducted soon after the pandemic hit, but most of the data was collected prior to the shutdown from COVID-19. Okay, so the purpose of my study, or this study, really gaining a deeper understanding of middle school teachers' perceptions and lived experiences of implementing one-to-one laptop computer technology in their teaching is essential to inform understandings about the value of a one-to-one laptop computer environment for knowledge development, student well-being in middle school classrooms. And although my particular study was really focused on middle level education, again, the takeaways that I'll share with you in a minute or two here, in my opinion, really apply to all levels of education. The significance of the study, this information that I'm sharing with you today provides valuable insight for teachers and schools considering adding or revising a one-to-one laptop computer initiative. And revising is critical here. We've all added it. We've been forced to add, a one-to-one environment in our schools over the last year and a half. But I think many schools now are revising and updating and trying to make their remote learning, if they're still doing remote learning, trying to make that as best as it can possibly be. This study's timely, really due to the increased demand for tools and resources to support remote learning and the increased availability of low-cost, high-performing laptop computers that are designed specifically for cloud-based learning and management of information. And that's where the Chromebooks come in. Chromebooks is just one brand name. There are many other tablets that schools can purchase. They're very inexpensive. We purchase our Chromebooks for about $250 a piece, I believe, something like that, as compared to, say, a MacBook computer, which I'm using right now, which costs about $1,100. So Chromebooks provide a quick connection to the internet, and on our Chromebooks, they're obviously made by Google. Everything we do is using the Google Suite. So we use the Google Cloud, shared documents, Gmail, everything that Google provides our kids have access to with their Chromebook. The sharp increase in availability of cloud-based laptop computers and online resources for teachers and students now paves the way for new innovative methods of using technology and instruction to meet the diverse needs of all students. So here are my assumptions. I assume that technology, or I believe that technology holds great potential, if not the greatest potential, in providing personalized learning opportunities for all students. Much of what we're talking about, or what's being discussed in this, I believe in this summit, is how can we best personalize instruction for our students, individualize that instruction to really engage students so that they can learn and grow regardless of where they're from, you know, what their status may be in society. It doesn't matter. How can we really personalize and individualize that learning? I believe that technology can increase student engagement for that very reason and achievement when used effectively. And I believe that technology can better prepare students with the skills they need, really strong employability skills like communication and networking and collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking. Those are the skills that our students need to be successful in the 21st century work environment. And I believe that technology can really enhance students' abilities to make healthy and informed decisions about their well-being, about their future, and their purpose and place in a global society. I know that technology oftentimes, and I hear this a lot as a middle school principal, technology gets a bad name so often because of how social media impacts our young adolescents and our high school students as well. And I understand that it can have a very negative impact on a student's well-being. But I believe that if we can harness that in a different way, that it can really help our students be even more informed and make healthier decisions as they mature into young adults. I am going to share just briefly the 3 themes of my literature review, or my literature overview, if I can say it that way. The first theme was, how is technology used in instruction? I mentioned this a little bit already, but there are 5 key areas where technology has the potential to transform teaching and learning completely. And those 5 areas are discovery, sharing of ideas, authentic problem solving, writing, editing, and gathering information, and collaboration. Next, preparing students for the 21st century by providing them with relevant and authentic opportunities to network. These are things that I mentioned already. Think critically, collaborate, and communicate, which requires less emphasis on content and direct instruction, while directing more time and energy toward access. That right there also resonated with me. I think we often, and when I use the term or the phrase teacher directed, I think we as teachers are very, very, I guess, trained to be content, direct instruction oriented, while the 21st century requires more of a shift towards giving kids access to information about what they're learning, about other cultures, whatever the case may be. Giving them access is important. Minimally invasive education talks about time and energy toward creating content are replaced with time and energy to provide safe, reliable, and consistent access to the internet. And as I said earlier, the teacher's role becomes more about encouragement and less about guidance, mentoring, or facilitating. My second theme was about personalized learning. Personalized learning really has 3 parts to it. It includes individualization, differentiation, and personalization. One thing that I want to point out in Pennsylvania, I'm not sure about other areas. I think it is pretty widespread, however. We evaluate teachers based on the Charlotte Danielson framework for teaching. And when you look at that rubric that we use to evaluate our teachers, the distinguished category in that framework uses these terms quite frequently: individualization, differentiation, and personalization. You know, this is a framework that's been widely adopted by many, many states. And in that framework, those three areas fall under the distinguished category, which I think is where all teachers want to be. A learner-centered approach, such as project and problem-based learning, result in more student engagement. I heard talks about that as well in our breakout groups. Students are just more highly engaged, and they're more satisfied and more motivated when they can have choice in terms of project and problem-based learning activities where they actually see how their efforts contribute to solving a problem or contributing to a broader project that they worked with other people on. That's huge. Also, advancements in technology has allowed our society, including our students, to see and experience the many benefits of globalization. Through technology, students learn how individuals, communities, and nations are interdependent, and why sustainability and equity is just essential, not just for those of us that happen to live here, but it's essential across our entire planet. And then my third theme was theories about using technology in instruction. The main theory that I studied was the Tpac Theory. Tpac framework delineates the meaningful connections, interactions, and affordances and constraints between and among three main things. It's content, you know, teachers knowing their content. It's pedagogy, knowing how to teach that content. And then the third item is technology. And really good teaching happens when those three areas come together effectively and equally to deliver whatever the instruction is that needs to be delivered. And then the other thing that came out of my third stream in my lit review was the often overlooked importance of teacher self-efficacy. I know this really came out strong in my study, is shaping teachers' beliefs about their capabilities to use technology effectively and efficiently to advance student achievement. That was a strong theme that came out of my study, and I'll share a little bit more about that in my takeaways here in just a minute. So here we go. Here are the 5 important takeaways. I'm happy to share this presentation with anybody that wants it, but here are the 15 important takeaways that came out of my study. And I'm going to just go through these one at a time, 3 or 4 per screen, and then I'll have time for questions at the end. So the first 3, teachers reported having a positive experience with technology when they had flexibility in training and professional development, and access to in-house experts, and a reliable infrastructure. That was critical. Training and professional development, access to in-house experts, and a reliable infrastructure. Number 2, professional development that incorporates this is the Tpac theory, technical, pedagogical, and content knowledge enhance the inspired use of technology, and the emphasis and emphasizes the importance of push and support from technology integrators. Now, let me just clarify that one real quickly. So the Tpac concept, that technical, pedagogical, and content knowledge aspect of professional development, that gets you that gets a teacher from an uninspired use of technology to a more student-centered, inspired use of technology. And that's a critical piece for teachers to understand that, for example, a lecture is still a lecture, even if it's, it doesn't change the fact that it's a lecture just because a teacher happens to place their notes on a PowerPoint presentation that is shown to a group of students. It's still a lecture. Whereas when you bring the different forms of technology into that, and when you consider the content knowledge that that teacher has, and when you think about the pedagogical best practices, suddenly a lecture can be turned into something more student-centered that might involve a problems-based project or problems-based learning activity, which becomes more inspiring for teachers and students, quite frankly. This is the other thing that came out. Number 3, this was a big one, much more than I thought. Students being distracted by games, chats, and social media forces teachers, not just teachers, forces educators, principals included, to rethink classroom management and emphasizes the importance of lesson planning and preparation. Teachers probably now more than ever have to be very, very well planned and prepared for each lesson in a one-to-one laptop computer environment, because the means for students to be distracted has suddenly now increased, and that can be very, very challenging for a teacher. All right. Let me see, there we go. I am sorry that my computer is lagging a little bit. Teachers greatly appreciate time to collaborate and learn from each other. That is something that I've learned as a building principal, that I have to give teachers when we are working in a one-to-one laptop environment, when we are learning new technology, they have to learn from each other and they need time to do that. Teachers' initial anxiety and fear can be diminished when the leader, and when I say leader, I don't mean just the principal, I really mean the district leadership team and the building leaders. They have to emphasize the potential future benefits of the technology in terms of reduced teacher workload, enhanced communication with students and families, just to name a few. Teachers, I have found, me included, tend to have a lot of anxiety and fear about implementing new forms of technology. But when you can place the emphasis not on necessarily on the change that's occurring, but more on the benefits that this change is going to bring, it tends to really bring teachers on board in terms of professional development and training. Cloud-based sharing tools, Google Docs, and other forms of sharing enhance student collaboration. They allow for more feedback on writing and other classwork, and they provide greater efficiency and workflow for teachers and students, and they provide more convenience for students, teachers, and parents. Okay, the role of the school librarian is critical. This is really important. Helping students access in-house high quality, digital information repositories and internet resources, and then collaborating with teachers and technology integrators to help students curate their resources into meaningful and useful products. I watched our school librarian evolve into, I watched her role, I should say, evolve into something completely different over the last 18 months. She quickly worked side by side with the classroom teachers at our middle school and our technology integrators. And let me just say a word about our technology integrators. It's critical, in my opinion, and based on my study, that schools have competent, approachable technology experts that can do a number of things. They can provide training, but the most important thing they can do is co-teach. They come in with a teacher side by side and they help that teacher plan. They They work with that teacher on the technology, and they become not just a person that will load software onto a computer, but a person that now partners with a teacher in terms of technology to support that teacher and get them on their way. And once that teacher is on their way, you know, the sky is the limit in terms of what they can do with technology in their classroom. The learning management, I do have a link here to, and you can click on this at another time, but for the sake of time here today, that link just takes you to the school library or the library site of our webpage at the middle school where I work, and it shows kind of what how the role of the school librarian needs to evolve. So anyway, that's what that link is for. The learning management system is critical. It provides a single access point for students, also for parents and teachers. It serves as one repository of information. It includes tutorials, agendas in terms of I'll even go so far as to say lesson plans, documents, videos, and other learning resources, and it's critically important. And it's extremely valuable. The LMS, the learning management system, increases transparency because it does give parents a glimpse into the classroom. They can see what's happening on a daily basis, you know, through the LMS that they have access to. The one-to-one laptop environment increases options for teachers to individualize, differentiate, and personalize instruction for their students by increasing student choice and flexibility. I think that the key word there is choice. When students have more options and more opportunities to choose what their learning is going to look like, or how it's going to proceed, or how they're going to be assessed, it increases achievement and certainly increases motivation. This is a critical one as well. It's imperative for schools to confront the false assumption that students already know how to use the technology to enhance their learning. We learned in my study over the last several years, we have learned that students really do not always know how to use technology effectively in terms of their academics, in terms of their learning and their growth. They just do not know how to do it. And we have to confront that. We have to make sure that we don't gloss over that. We have to take the time to teach them and help them see and model for them how different technology tools or different forms of technology can really help them in their learning journey. And systems have to be in place. Whatever system you choose, it doesn't matter, but systems have to be in place to ensure that all students have fully functioning devices for every class every day. So if a student comes into school and their Chromebook is not charged, the school has to have a system to make sure that that child has a functioning Chromebook for that day. That system can be charging stations. It can be loaner devices that are available, just like you would check out a book from the library. Whatever the system is that you decide, it needs to be reliable and it needs to be in place, because the last thing you would ever want to happen is for a student in a one-to-one laptop environment in a school to come to school and not be able to access their device. That will alienate that student for an entire day, and in my opinion, can have a pretty significant negative impact on a student. So that's something that schools have to decide how they're going to do that, but it has to be in place. The other thing that we learned is inconsistent use and underutilization of the learning management system by teachers can really be problematic for students. There has to be a level of standardization in the LMS for students, so that when they go to their math class and they're going to the announcement page of the LMS to see what's going to happen in math class that day, that experience in terms of that user-friendly experience for the student when they access that LMS, it should really be similar in each of their classes, and it should be relatively standard across the school, maybe even across the school district, moving from elementary to middle and middle to high school. It doesn't mean that it's a cookie cutter kind of approach to teaching and learning. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm saying is that the student experience should be similar, needs to be similar, so that it takes the unpredictability out of a student experience when they access an LMS for a particular class. One thing that I will mention, adding one-to-one devices, at least at the middle level, it does make the transition from elementary to middle school much more challenging. It's already tough for elementary students to transition to a middle school. They're going through a lot of changes when they come to the middle school. If we are adding devices now to that transition, schools, middle schools in particular, and elementary schools have to be prepared for that. That came out very loud and clear in my study, that and that's something we're currently working on, is bolstering our transition activities so that that's a little bit easier, a little bit more manageable for our 6th grade students coming in. And I think a battle that we're always going to fight, it's always going to be there, is the battle of helping students helping them to understand the importance and learn the importance of being responsible digital citizens, and help them see the moral implications of making bad decisions with technology. We deal with that quite a bit at our middle school, and I'm sure that every middle school and other high schools and various schools around the world deal with it too, is technology certainly has the capability to hurt someone and create damage, and we have to, we can't ignore that. We have to stay at the forefront in terms of modeling and helping students to be responsible users of the digital devices that they have. So I'm gonna just wrap it up with a concluding statement, and then I am happy to answer questions, or if there is anything that I shared that isn't clear, happy to provide clarification. But before I do that, in conclusion, we must equip our teachers with the skills and the time needed to develop inspiring technology-enhanced learning experience for students. These learning experiences need to promote collaboration, communication, and critical thinking skills, and they must be embedded in challenging problem-solving contexts tied to real-life circumstances and scenarios. Our teachers are the most important piece of the equation, and we have to really equip them and help them and provide time for them and resources for them to do these things, to promote collaboration and communication and critical thinking skills. Providing learning experiences such as this to our students enables them to identify their strengths. It helps them identify their weaknesses and their passions. It helps them develop perseverance and resilience, and equips them to be lifelong learners, problem solvers, innovators, and productive contributors to society. The degree to which we can equip teachers in providing learning experiences such as this will profoundly impact how we create and support innovative pedagogical practices to ensure educational equity for all diverse learners in emerging learning environments. So I'm going to stop talking now because I've talked way too much, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions out there.
We thank you so very much for this very interesting presentation that sort of brought together many of the ideas that we've heard all day. You provided us with a strategy by which we can do that. There was a question in the chat room about how can how does technology help special needs learners in this program? So one of the things that you had said was that the flexibility helps teachers address needs of even the special learner by individualizing instruction at their own level and their own pace. Also, technology can give students collaboration or privacy to learn. The parent, student, and teacher can find lessons and activities that can all work together so that they can collaboratively work together as a team in order to help those students with special needs, so that what they're doing at school can transition into the home. This has been a very informative presentation, and I think you answered that question. And so now I believe that if anyone else has any questions or comments for Dr. Dissinger, he does have a few minutes. I know it's 5 o'clock, and this is going into our after summit discussion. So I hope that some of you can stay on. If you must leave, we do promise to have you out by 5:30, about another half an hour, because we did lose a little time. But if you must leave, please come back tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be even more interactive than today. We have more technology tomorrow. We have China educators from China presenting tomorrow. We have Dr. Radam Abustami, who's got a dynamic presentation. And I know he's just raring to go after all that he's heard today. We have faculty coming on and just so much more tomorrow that we're starting at 1 o'clock tomorrow. For those of you who must leave, just to let you know. So in UAE, that would be an hour earlier. So that will be 9 o'clock tomorrow evening. And your time, 9 p.m. And it will be 1 p.m. for us here in the United States. So please make a note of that in terms of the time. And now I'm going to allow you to see if you have a question for Dr. Dissinger before he has to dash off. But keeping in mind that he is making his presentation available, and we'll have some time also tomorrow. And we're also going to have a commentary from Dr. Nabil about today's sessions. So any questions for Dr. Dissinger before I turn it over to Dr. Nabil for his commentary? Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Dissinger. As I said, there's been comments in the chat room there. So Dr. Nabil, we are ready for your commentary.
Okay, so before we lose Dr. Dissinger, I did actually have a question that kind of segues into the commentary. And that is, I have to confess to a bit of skepticism on my side about technology. And without overstating the skepticism, one question I would have, for example, is can technology get in the way of certain pedagogical goals, like, for example, deep reading? And I could come up with another example in terms of cultural interaction, but let's just start with the deep reading idea, because I personally feel as though over the last decade, as devices have become more ubiquitous in all of our lives, that reading has kind of shrunk from finishing a book to reading, a short article, and that's as adults, but the equivalent is also true with children.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I would agree with you. I think that's been a byproduct of social media too. And again, my context is more with middle school children, young adolescents, and I would agree that I believe that technology has probably created a lack of deep reading, but I think I would add to that and say technology can also enhance deep reading in terms of, for example, one of the things that we do at our middle school is we get into a lot of discussions. Students get in, particularly in 7th grade, get into a lot of discussions about novels that they've read. And technology helps us with that because it you know, on the learning management system, you can provide check-ins. You can, where students have to post, you know, possibly after they've read each chapter, they post, they respond to a prompt, or they share a deep thought or something that resonated with them from a particular chapter that they read from a book. That's just one example where I don't disagree. I think, you know, there is that fear of, you know, instead of reading the book, I'm going to read an abstract, or I'm going to read a synopsis of the book. Whereas you can, with kids, you can really, they still read the book. They still have a hard copy of that book, but the technology piece of it enhances that, because now you can have students responding to that book almost on a chapter by chapter basis, not just within their school, but it can be with people outside of the students outside of the school as well. So that would be my response to that question. It's a great question, though.
Let me turn it over to Professor Ghanem, because there seems to be a follow-on question.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Stephen, for the informative presentation. I like the idea you mentioned that let us give teachers time and opportunity to try to taste and give them freedom to develop themselves. This is the main idea behind your term. I like it. And at the same time, I'd like also to mention that, you know, and you agree with me, technology should not be the target. It is a tool to facilitate and to lead to best chance to learn, to interact. And I'm sure that you agree also with me in the fact that attitude by teachers toward technology actually still not developed well. I think this is one of the big problem over all the world. You agree with me? I remember I and Dr. Joyce, we did research about the technology and the needs of the teachers as a comparison study between United Arab States and United Arab Emirates. And we found that we share the same, problems and concerns. Do you agree with me that we don't want to replace teachers by technology? We want to make them believe in technology and use technology like interesting, like a fun. How we can do this with teachers? How we can let them feel that technology help them and support their interaction and learning? Dr. Stephen.
Yep, that's a great question. And I have my response to that, again, within the context of my experience in a middle school, I think where teachers, what I have learned over the years is that teachers become very, very excited about technology when they can learn from, in our case, we have what we refer to as technology integrators. These are teachers that, for example, one of them was a former science teacher. The other one was a former math teacher. So these are teachers that have experience managing a classroom, teaching in a classroom, writing lesson plans, planning, preparing, all of that. And they have this real strong competence in terms of technology. And they come in and they work with teachers and show them, and almost hand over hand in some regard, in some ways, and really show them that, listen, this is not anything that you need to be afraid of. This is going to not only help you, but it's going to enhance your instruction. So I guess in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is that in my experience, the best way to help teachers feel comfortable with it, to really grasp onto it, embrace it, is to get them with people that can really help them, their peers, the people that are in the building, people that are approachable, and people that are accessible almost on a moment's notice. And I think that's where, in my experience, that's what's had the biggest impact.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much. All right, so I've been asked to provide some final comments and questions for the panelists, perhaps. And we've had three wonderful presentations this afternoon. And the overall question is the following: how do we reimagine educational policy to create and support innovative pedagogical practices to ensure educational equity for all diverse learners in emerging learning environments? And in our three presentations, we've had three different, slices, if you will, of this question, where Dr. Lippert provided a very detailed study of Pennsylvania area teachers and how they were able to score on global competencies with what I would argue is the additional thought that the global competencies of the teachers are quite key for delivering similar skills in students. And then we had our colleague Andrew Peterson tell us about sort of a view from the trenches about Walk With Me, in the sense of in how one can get international exchanges in the classroom through his experiences, and a lively Q&A after that. And then finally, Professor Dissinger, Principal Dissinger, Dr. Dissinger, yes, also true, gave us what I would call a very pro-technology perspective, which again, I expressed a little bit of skepticism about, regarding the use of technology in the classroom and how that can help with our instruction. So let me turn to a couple of questions that I've come up with to sort of continue the thread, and then see either panelists or participants if they have further thoughts on these questions. So one overall question that occurs to me is, what should be the relationship between straight content knowledge, things like knowledge about politics, history, and society, and the more intangible skills that were described here quite frequently, things like the ability to communicate, respect others, etc. And I've noticed something of a divide there. When I was thinking of global competencies, for me, it was a lot about content. In other words, do you know enough to engage with folks from other countries? And it seems as though that's not really the focus. The focus seems to be much more about intangible skills, things like respect and respect for others, and beneficial ways to interact. And I'm struck by that difference, because it seems like it was, to me, much more about content, and for everyone else, it was much more about the intangibles. So what are some perspectives on the relationship between the two? I see from Dr. Pittman some thoughts. Let me phrase the question another way. Is there a baseline of knowledge that should be achieved? And I mean content knowledge, or is it that you should go straight to one-to-one connections and just try to facilitate international understanding through connections, which technology can facilitate? I open it first to our panelists, especially Andrew. You're muted still.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent question, Dr. Takriti. I think that is my personal opinion would be that the intangibles, the relationship, the one-on-one, the communicative skills would lead to the other, the political, historical, geographical content knowledge of global competence. I think the more you get to know the person, any person you may meet from another country, that you will, quite naturally want to know where it is, what the history is, what's going on there now. Yet it doesn't work the other way. There are plenty of people who know a lot about the content knowledge, the history, the politics, the geography, yet may not have those interpersonal skills, which could lead to mutual understanding, even though they know everything about what they need to know in a theoretical sense.
I've often come to think that the intangibles are somehow not taught. They seem to be something that either come from the person naturally or they come through experience, and those experiences are very hard to create. And one thing I've noticed is that pedagogically, it seems like the most effective way to achieve that is study abroad. But then there's serious problems with that, whereby study abroad is something that only those of a certain standing are able to do. I mean, financial standing or visa standing, to be honest. That a second problem is a lot of American study abroad programs can venture into tourism, where they don't really learn much because they're in a bubble. And the bubbles are getting stronger over time, not weaker. And that they can be they've tended to get shorter in length as well. You know, whereas 20, 30 years ago, the goal was at least a semester abroad and preferably a year. Now it seems to have shrunk to preferably 6 weeks, but 2 weeks is okay. And that then becomes ever closer to tourism, which, while perhaps useful in some ways, because you can have a good interaction very quickly, are very problematic programmatically, because I'm not sure that the students are having that many interactions. So without taking up the floor too much, I'll give one example from my own experience as a student. And we have some Arabic speakers here who can appreciate the Arabic component of this. So my third year abroad, it was an entire year at AUC in Cairo, after studying Arabic for 2 years at my fine university. So the first morning, I'm supposed to go to school, and I very politely asked a taxi driver in Zamalek how to get to El Jamia Al Amrikiya Bil Qahira. And I said it pretty much like that. So the very formal, American University in Cairo. And the taxi driver kind of looked at me quizzically, not really getting what I wanted. So there was this student next to me who simply said, Gamal Amrikiya. He kind of barked it out, which is what people actually say. And then I get into the taxi with him and off I go. From that point on, I knew to say simply Gamal Amrikiya. And then the next morning, I learned that I could walk there in 20 minutes. The third morning, I noticed that guys were holding each other's hands and that didn't mean anything. The fourth morning, I may have learned other aspects about the walk between Zamalek and AUC. That sort of experience, I don't know if you can reproduce technologically. You could try. You could try to do it with an interactive gaming system. You could try to do it with one-on-one connections technologically between Arabic speakers and those who are studying Arabic. But I don't know that you can reproduce the entire package without actually being there, and preferably being there for a long time. And that's a commentary on really all the presentations. So I'll stop there for a moment and see if anyone would react to what I just pointed out.
I'm happy to react. I couldn't agree with you more. Many years ago, I did a study abroad, and I went to an English speak. I spent a semester, little more than a semester, just outside of London, England. And I came from a very rural part of Pennsylvania, and even went to university in a relatively rural area. And suddenly I studied abroad in just outside of London, and it was absolutely life-changing for me. And I would say that I would venture to say that there is no piece of technology that could match that for me, that experience of 3.5 months overseas. I learned more about Europe than anything technology or textbook related could teach me. But I also feel this way, that you are right in that I was able to do that. I had classmates that were not able to do that because of finances or grades or whatever the case may be. But in those days, there would be no way for them to experience another culture. Whereas today, although it's not the same as a semester or a year or multiple years abroad, we do have technology that can help students at a very young age experience other cultures and other areas of our globe through even video, even what we're doing right now through Zoom and other video conferencing formats that we have. They can actually develop relationships that may enable them then someday to visit that person and maybe in a maybe a less direct way experience that culture that they, you know, that they never would have had it not been for at least a start, a catalyst with technology.
To circle back to Dr. Lippert for a moment, can anyone think of ways to increase the global competencies of teachers? Because that's also a very relevant part of this discussion. I mean, one of the things I remember from the recent past is there were programs where you could have teachers go on brief study abroad experiences, something like 6 weeks during the summer break, which ironically enough, I'm finding gets ever more difficult as our summers shrink from what used to be 12 weeks to now basically 7 weeks. And that seems to be a national trend.
If you allow me just to not exactly answer the question, it is a very important question because our main goal behind this discussion is to find the best way and practices to encourage teachers to improve their competencies and to improve the competencies overall in the global level. I believe, and this is one of the ideas, I will discuss it tomorrow with you, inshallah, improving competences can be done like or by programs or like attend some sessions or just hear some ideas or get some training. I believe it should be like a self-initiative, number one, because if I am initiate some ideas, it means that I am aware about myself and I can identify my needs. So every teacher should be encouraged to evaluate his or her needs based on the reality in order to align his activities and teaching methods or pedagogy with the students' needs and their cultures, number one. Number two, I believe also well-designed professional development also by the experts or by the leaders. And here I will come also to connect between leadership and initiatives to improve this area in general. So I believe to answer this question, we need to check with the teachers themselves. What do you think? What you need? This means that they again have good like background or knowledge about themselves, their needs. I address this under the self-awareness. I hope I answered a little bit the question, but there is more ideas, I'm sure, and suggestions to improve these competencies. And don't forget that these competencies actually continuous, no end. You know, every day we face a lot of changes and challenges. Take this COVID pandemic, for example, moving from face-to-face to online suddenly. Maybe we prepare something, but it is not enough. So we also need to think about how to keep this, again, continuous process. The competence will never end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see that Dr. Pittman put her presentation tomorrow there. So Dr. Pittman?
Yeah, well, I just made some comments in the chat room. I think that the question is critical in terms of that was raised. And that is what we are here to discuss, because this, for the last 4.5 going on 5 years, the U.S. Department of Education has been putting millions of dollars into Title VI grant funds to answer this question. And we come together in conferences and summits, and we debate these issues, and we're trying to, first of all, I think the first thing is we've got to answer the question, what knowledge base is needed? We've got to create this knowledge base that goes beyond the soft skills, as was mentioned. Yes, That's part of it. We need to be able to understand students. We have to communicate with them. And I think we have to do all of that before we can, or while we are helping them to develop their knowledge in particular content areas. We have to be able to know how to communicate with them. We have to know how they learn. That's another thing. How do these diverse learn? The people learn differently. Students learn differently depending on their culture. We've learned that a lot of students come from environments to us who are accustomed to memorization and rote learning, and we're trying to get away from that. So what pedagogical foundation do our teachers need to move students from where they are to where we want them to go? There are many definitions of being globally competent. We saw that in the opening film that I showed you, where we interviewed teachers and said, what does global competence mean to you? And each one of those teachers or leaders described their perceptions of global competence. I don't know if we will ever come to one definition or overall understanding, but certainly given that all of the schools and universities are now calling for global education and global competence, we must know or have some way of framing it and defining what it is. If we say we need to integrate it into our curriculums and make our teachers more globally competent, then we've got to be able to define specific outcomes and benchmarks, things that we can measure and that we can observe that will tell us whether or not that teacher is competent to work with students of diverse cultures, diverse languages, or just special needs, or whatever these differences are. So that is I see it as an ongoing conversation. This has been great today. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow, because we have some other examples coming from China and various other places. We also have more examples of strategies. And hopefully by the end of, by tomorrow, after we hear from Dr. Aranam, who's going to give us our start tomorrow, he'll be first thing on the agenda to set the stage for tomorrow. And then we're going to go through some virtual tours. We're going to look at how visual arts are being used to connect students. We are going to look at film projects, and we're going to open up this dialogue and reflections with representatives more. We have a faculty panel tomorrow that's going to talk about some very specific things that we are doing in our School of Education to help our pre-service teachers. So we're going to bring it down to earth. We open this up today, and we've achieved exactly what we wanted today, in that we wanted to see, what's going to be necessary for us to develop a shared vision and make recommendations for the future. As I said, this summit, we'll probably leave this summit with more questions than we came with. And that's good, because we learned by asking questions. So I'm glad that we are not coming with all the answers today. We are what we're discovering today are the imperatives for change. And that is, yes, we need this change, but how and what do we change before we can do that? And how do we foster new and improved relationships with key stakeholders that can help us make this change? Who are these change agents that we need to be collaborating with? We need professors from UAE. We need professors from China. If we're talking about globalization, we need to learn from them what they do with their students. So as they come to us here in our own states, we can adopt or know how to adapt some of the policies and practices that we do here to make those students feel included and not excluded when they come into our classrooms, and vice versa. When our students go to UAE, when our students go to China, the educators there need to understand our culture as well, so that there is no one dominant culture. When you talk about globalizing education and global competencies, there is no dominant educational system. Everybody's voice matters. Everyone's strategies matters, because we're all working with the same goal in mind. And that is, we want to facilitate what we call learning forward, learning for the future, 2030. And we start today.
Yes, I agree with you.
Thank you very much.
Interesting. Thank you.
So before you leave, so one way to use technology, I'm just gonna show you this one brief film. And then I'll let you go to hopefully make you feel like you're going to a different country. And so we're gonna just see how one teacher has incorporated using technologies for students to tell their stories. And this is a young woman that is a part of the UNESCO group, and she's taking us on a tour of Budapest.
Hey everyone, my name is Hannah, and here's my beautiful city, Budapest. Behind me, you can see the Parliament of Hungary. I want to show my favorite places. Let's go together. This is a little bit slow. Let's teleport.
So if you were going to show a film like this, you might ask students, what did you observe about this film? This is a student-made film. What story is she trying to tell about her country? And each students can do this.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it is amazing.
Now we are standing on my favorite bridge. It's wonderful, isn't it? I really love yellow.
So you might ask students, what favorite bridge do you have in your city? This is Bridging the Gaps. What are your favorite places in your city?
This is a little bit dangerous.
The country
Let's
you
move
come
on.
from. Questions like this to start conversation and to show interest in that person's environment. And we show here, people are good. People are all the same. People are not as different as we think they are. They all enjoy the same things.
Here's the most beautiful fountain of Hungary.
What fountain do you have in your city?
I also love this.
They'll find
Wait a
everybody
second.
has a fountain in their city.
Do you listen to this
So
music
they
too?
can have common dialogue.
It was cool, isn't it? Let's move on.
Imagine if the teacher or the students in your class have one time each week where somebody shared their culture in their city.
The name of this place is Halászbástya. From here we can see all of Budapest. Everyone, be sure to visit this beautiful city one day. We will meet at here.
And I thank you for your time today. I thank you for your patience today. We look forward to a day tomorrow filled with more exciting dialogue and discussion. And we are just so pleased. I have pages and pages of notes that I have my notebook here, just taking so many notes. So we are really looking forward to, by the end of tomorrow, to have so much more to share. We will be doing a final report. All of what you're seeing is going to be available on the website so that you'll be able to come back and revisit these presentations. You're going to be able to contact these presenters and learn more just about these topics. So we thank you. And if there are any questions about tomorrow, we will be sure to respond to them now. Welcome back, Anita Forster. She's one of our greatest cheerleaders. She had to step out for a minute, but we're so glad to have her back, and all of you. And so we notice people have been leaving because we know it's way past some of your bedtimes. And we're not going to keep you any longer. Unless there are any pressing questions that anyone has, then we'll be happy to stay on and answer those. But those of you who need to leave, which we understand, which we certainly understand, you may leave, and we will see you tomorrow. And day 2, July 14th, educational leadership, innovative technology, and equity during the pandemic. Those are our themes for tomorrow. And we have a moderator, Dr. Gallup, and our guest of honor, the role of leadership in supporting language learning and teachers' global competency. So he's going to shed light on it. So you don't want to miss tomorrow, and you don't want to be late, because we will start on time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pittman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Joyce.
Thank you,
Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Pittman. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation, wonderful participation today.
Yes.
So we'll stop share, and here we all are.